वेलकम बैक टू अनदर एपिसोड ऑफ थॉट बिहाइंड थिंग्स। आज हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं एक बहुत ही खास मेहमान जो कि एक्चुअली मेरे बैच में थे कंप्यूटर साइंस के फास्ट इस्लामाबाद में। ये बैच के थीटे थे, पता नहीं क्यों हमारे साथ बैठे हुए हैं जैसे नाचीज़ लोगों के साथ, बट इट्स एन ऑनर टू हैव अतीक उर रहमान विद अस ऑन द शो। यू नो, ही इज़ वन ऑफ द स्मार्टेस्ट गाइज you'll ever hear. He's currently the technical lead of AI at Motive, previously Keep Trucking. बहुत कमाल का, मेरा ख्याल है पाकिस्तान में अगर जो सबसे कटिंग एज AI का काम हो रहा है वो शायद मोटिव वाली कर रहे हैं। और इसी के साथ साथ also the co-founder of Maveshi farm, so he has two very distinct interests, एक AI and the future of technology, and दूसरा organic farming. Would love to have more conversation on that. Atique भाई, thank you so much for being part of the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Conversation को मैं start करूँगा जिस तरह normally मैं करता हूँ. Tell me a little bit about your early life. Where were you born? Schooling वगैरह कहाँ से की?
So I was born in Cantt and I've been in Cantt for all my life. My schooling was from federal schools. That was the most high-rated school that there. Beacon House and all these private branches started slowly after that.
आपके पास मेरा ख्याल है बैक आया था बीकन हाउस का जो एजुकेशन का मोटरवे के आसपास जो
exactly and slowly they started to come into the city, and now I think it's the city with the most number of schools and highest rate of education in Pakistan.
I think वहाँ पे सारे engineers और
so literacy is very high, and I would put it this way कि education is the biggest business there.
अच्छा.
Right. There are academies that are surpassing KIPS. For example, KIPS started recently, and they were really struggling to get the right students with them, because eventually if you produce the students with the highest number of marks in FSC or metric and whatever, that's your name in that area, right? So the native academies and the coaching centers that were there, they were really giving tough competition to all these big.
Wakand का मुझे थोड़ा सा बताएं. So there's Islamabad, main city Islamabad. I know Islamabad and I know Taxila because a friend of mine lives in Taxila.
Okay.
And वो GT road से.
Wakand is attached to Taxila, so the boundaries are connected.
ठीक है.
Tehsil is that Taxila is the Tehsil, so Wakand comes in that Tehsil. And the boundaries are associated. So Taxila ends and then Wakand starts, and it's a very small city, 3-4 kilometers of diameter, and that's it.
सही है.
And it's
है क्या like साथ तो Taxila भी उसी के साथ नोड में
Wakand associated है, दूसरे एंड पे हसन अब्दाल है.
अच्छा, ठीक है.
And this is the Kent area and majorly associated with the Pakistan Ordnance Factory. Okay. So it started for the employees of that factory. There were their houses there and everything associated with that, and then slowly they also introduced a commercial area in which it also started with the employees, so started giving plots to retired employees and all that. So this area happened this way.
आपके करीब यार वो MPCHS वालों के फार्म्स हैं मेरा ख्याल है उस स्कीम के उस साइड के ऊपर.
Exactly on
यार वो फार्म खरीदा आपने?
Not yet.
इतना ज़बरदस्त, क्योंकि मैं तो मेरा बड़ा दिल था उस फार्म के ऊपर, लेकिन वो बड़ा दूर पड़ता है मेरे से.
It's connected.
But I remember back in 2018 60 लाख रुपीज़ में आपको 5 कनाल मिल रहा था. मैंने
it's much more now.
हाँ, मैंने रिसेंटली देखा तो वहाँ डेवलपमेंट वगैरह हो गया, तो आई थिंक 2 करोड़ रुपए.
The reason is that it's connected to Islamabad, so they usually sell in a way that you are very close to Islamabad. For example, on motorway you take from the boundary of Islamabad to the boundary of Wakand, it would take roughly 15 minutes.
अच्छा.
Right.
So there's one exit and then
you just take motorway and then you exit and you enter Islamabad.
Makes sense. So schooling was in एक ही स्कूल था, उसी में सारे
एक ही स्कूल था. Different branches of that school till 5th, and then moving towards metric. I did matriculation. O levels were not the cool thing at that time, at least in Wakand.
मैट्रिक वाली सक्सेस स्टोरी आ रही है, आप लोग बाद में गालियाँ देते हैं कि ये लेवल्स वाले हमेशा बुलाते हैं. Metric and FSC.
Yes, metric and FSC combination.
Yeah. And what was the how did you score in those?
I was a good student from the start, so 80-85% in metric, and then also again FSC was a natural decision क्योंकि हर चाचू ने या मामू ने किसी ने इंजीनियरिंग की होती है, and they are the ones highlighted. So I was forcefully inducted to FSC. So I'm the only brother. I have 2 sisters. So the star of the family who's going to be an engineer and
who's going to be the
turn the tables. Yeah. So I started FSC pre-engineering from a government school. And then the 2009? 2009-2011. And till then it was pretty straightforward path. Metric and then FSC, and then the real story starts after FSC. That's what the fun happened.
Right.
So in my FSC, I was very interested in maths, so I was good at maths from start. I was good in physics and also good in chemistry. So these were the subjects that I was exploring beyond the curriculum.
Physics, math, and
Chemistry also.
Chemistry also. Okay.
So particularly in maths and physics. So for example, I was creating DIY projects in my FSC, learning how a battery works. I would do cycling and associate a generator with the cycle that will power the bulbs and things like that, right? Creating a cooler of my own, all those stuff. So naturally, the notion was that I'm going to become an electrical engineer. I love electrical engineering, although I didn't know anything about electrical. There was no counseling at that time, and that is why I'm a very proactive advocate of counseling. That you should know which discipline you're going into, what's happening in next 5 years, not what happened in past 20 years, right? But the journey was the other one. So I decided to go towards NICT or UET Lahore because these were the two universities producing highest quality electrical engineers. I did give the entry test and everything, and then the twist happened. The test got leaked.
Right.
This was a year, right?
Yeah.
And the test was very good, so I was very hopeful that I'll get admission into both of them, and then I can choose. But the test got cancelled, and we got a couple of months before the test would again be conducted. उस duration में a friend of mine told कि इस तरह एक FAST एक university है and there is this scholarship.
So you had absolutely no idea about FAST to begin with?
I didn't know any idea about FAST or computer science. I had a computer, but till games and everything. So I didn't know about computer science and everything. Windows का पता था और ये पता था कैसे crack करना है, and then that's it. So a friend of mine whose elder brother was in FAST also, so he had a background and he decided to join FAST. He didn't give entry test of any other university. So he went there and he was sort of an advocate, just try it out. And at that time, National ICT R&D scholarship was coming in, and it was coming in after 4 years. So the last batch was 2007. And then it was coming in 2011. And since it was restarting, so they had a very different process. Earlier, the process was that you give a generalized test, and then you give a priority of universities, and they'll get you inducted based on your merit. In this case, they chose some universities, and then the universities were conducting the test themselves. So in this case, FAST was conducting this test, and it was free of cost. So you have nothing to lose.
So FAST is going to define the top talent essentially. पूरे पाकिस्तान से आप compete नहीं कर रहे, आप FAST के pool से compete कर रहे हैं.
आप FAST के pool से compete कर रहे हैं, but there was also another restriction जो कि ICT R&D की restriction है, that you cannot be from a developed city.
Okay.
There is a list of approved cities.
So for once in life, being from Wakhan
helped a lot and transformed my whole career.
Right.
Actually, not exactly Wakhan, but Texla. So coming in Texla. This is Texla. Otherwise, Wakhan is a high literate rate. So I gave that test. The result came out after a couple of days. So it was very surprising because UET or Baki sab mein the whole process was manual. And I went to FAST. First of all, the whole ambience and environment. And then I gave a test on computer. And then after 2 weeks, and not even after 2 days, the same day or maybe the next day, the test came out and I was selected in computer science. And even in FAST, there was an option to select both disciplines. I'd selected electrical engineering at first and then computer science, and by chance I got into computer science. And that is why I usually say when people ask that why did you choose computer science,
accidental.
Is that it chose me. I didn't choose computer science, it chose me. So it was all natural. I decided not to go. And I was waiting for the other two universities to reconduct the test, and I'll go to UT Texas still.
Just to confirm, and obviously because UET I think is a private fees. वैसे तो है तो government ही, right?
It's government, and at that year they usually had an overseas quota, right, on which you can pay the fee and join. Otherwise, the fee is very nominal, like 12,000 a semester or something. And at that time, they introduced a newer, bigger quota in which anyone can come in at self-pay. And it was still nominal, somewhere around 30,000-40,000, and you can still join in.
FAST was what, 75,000?
FAST was somewhere around 70-80.
Was that a concern for you? Yeah.
That was definitely a concern because I was coming from a very humble background.
Right.
And I wasn't sure how we are going to afford my engineering, to be honest. And that is why I wanted to go either to UET because the fee was nominal, or to go to NICT because there is a possibility that you can get a scholarship if you perform good within that semester.
Right.
And I was so hopeful that I'll perform good in all the semesters that we can get the fee waived off. But then came FAST, and there were two factors. First of all, of course, because it was a scholarship, I didn't know anything about CS, so the title was BScs, and I was actually very stressed that I don't know what this is, but now I have a scholarship. So मतलब
and this is a
all
full
of
ride,
that.
so this is like
This is a full scholarship with pocket money, with books money, with residence, with transportation and everything. So
that's incredible.
NICT is a very underrated program and it's not appreciated enough. The good thing is that they provide so much facilitation that someone from Dadu and someone from a very rural area, they don't have to attend any coaching classes. They conduct the coaching classes using government schools.
Achha.
And in those government schools, they would use to first train the teachers. There were training centers in which the teachers would get trained and then वो आपको आके बच्चों को कोचिंग देंगे and then आप टेस्ट देंगे इंट्री टेस्ट की.
अच्छा.
So private institutes तो already इंट्री टेस्ट की कोचिंग दे रहे थे but it was very expensive.
Right.
So NICT ने इस तरीके से सॉल्व किया था कि हम टीचर्स को ट्रेन करेंगे, गवर्नमेंट के टीचर्स को, वो आपको ट्रेन करेंगे and then you do the test and everything is zero fee.
Fascinating.
ना आपकी कोई टेस्ट again targeting the rural area in the right way.
And I mean, it's just incredible the amount of stories that you even fast में हमारे पास जो आए हुए थे दूर दराज इलाकों के बच्चे थे जिनकी जिंदगियाँ आज आप देखते हो and you're just like कि यार you meet them today and you're not even gonna know कि यार ये पता नहीं कुछ सिंध के इस गांव से आया हुआ है. और
exactly they were, I mean I have a very concrete story of a friend who didn't attended FSC just because there were no college to attend. They used to just get admitted और वो कभी 2 साल कभी वो नहीं जाएंगे and then they just go and
give the
exams.
खुद पढ़ के.
Even in that scenario they would top the exam and then come to a university. So they have the talent लेकिन वहाँ पे resources available नहीं है. NICT would pick specially those children, take them here to all the top universities in Pakistan. उसमें जी की थी. I'm not sure about LUMS, but
LUMS का NICT program same
वो different, उनका separate program था. But Islamic and all the Islamabad universities and also Lahore campuses and everything. And then यहाँ पे they'll not only provide them financial support, they would only make sure that they are well incorporated into the culture.
Achha.
Right. I still remember that Dr. Aftab was specially attending all of those NICT students and then giving them a tour and making sure that nobody is affected by the change in culture and everything.
Yeah.
He used to visit our hostels just to make sure that everything is perfect there.
Yeah, and for most part, I mean, I'm a Islamabadi student, right? So I couldn't tell कि कौन सा बच्चा कौन सा.
You couldn't tell.
Start के मेरे ख्याल एक semester में उन्होंने एक वो रखा हुआ था.
Separate way because it started late. So they
उसके बाद उन्होंने mix and match कर दिया हुआ था.
And that was also on NICT's request that we don't want them to be treated separately. We want them to indulge into the culture. So आप shuffling.
So they're very closely involved with the. Yeah, that's pretty amazing, by the way.
Yeah, I think the head was Anwar Masood's son. I don't remember the name. And
Anwar
he used
Masood
to,
अपना जो the writer.
Yeah, and
Achha.
he used to visit every other semester, and he would take all the teachers out of the auditorium. He'll take in the students. And he'll say, tell me your problems, I'm here to solve them. And he actually solved the problem. For example, we had very little issues in hostels and everything. He said, chalo, bus mein baitho sare and then let's go to the hostel and solve this problem. So they were very integrated and it's the program not enough appreciated. And it ended, unfortunately, after a couple of years. But it transformed the lives of a lot of people.
Yeah. And so this is, you were living in a hostel at the time?
I was living in a hostel.
कि वो long commute को.
Yeah, first semester I traveled and then it was not worth it because वो 1-1.5 घंटे के अंदर you get exhausted and everything. So hostel was available and even when I was not attending hostel, my seat was reserved. So sort of that money was also being wasted.
Yeah.
So that is how it started. A friend of mine had a friend of mine who was studying at FAST. So he got to know that I got admitted to NICT and I met him and he was, I mean, that was the changing moment. So he was looking at me from top to bottom and like this. And I was like, what happened? So he would say that we've heard stories of people coming in from NICT in 07 and then they got all the gold medals and they were so bright that we used to imagine that they're from another planet. वो पता नहीं कौन से लोग हैं, कौन से थीटे हैं जो NICT पे आते हैं और तुम्हारा एडमिशन हो गया तुम नहीं जा रहे. So he convinced me to attend the classes. Just for 2 to 3 weeks, जब तक नेक्स्ट में एडमिशन हो जाएगा तब तक तुम अटेंड कर लो एंड देन यू गेट योर स्कॉलरशिप कैंसल्ड, कोई मसला नहीं है. आई स्टार्ट कमिंग टू फास्ट एंड विद इन 3 weeks आई थिंक आई वाज सोल्ड. द टाइम ऑफ, आई मीन द लेवल ऑफ कमिटमेंट फ्रॉम द टीचर्स. फॉर एग्जाम्पल वी वर लेट, राइट? सो हमारी ओरिएंटेशन थी, हमें किसी बारे में कुछ भी नहीं पता था. वी जस्ट केम इन कि ओरिएंटेशन है, देखते हैं क्या होता है. 2 घंटे उन्होंने ओरिएंटेशन की एंड देन दे सेड कि अब आप लोगों की क्लासेस स्टार्ट हैं क्योंकि हमने इनफ टाइम वेस्ट कर दिया, हम आज के दिन वेस्ट नहीं करना चाहते. Just go to the classes, someone would take you to the class. उसके बाद शाम को your hostels are ready, खाना पका हुआ है, बस बाहर खड़ी है, आप लोग बैठें, घर जाएं, रेस्ट करें, कल से आपकी रेगुलर क्लासेस स्टार्ट हो रही. सो दैट वाज द लेवल ऑफ कमिटमेंट एंड आई वाज अमेज्ड कि हमने
पाकिस्तान में इतना अच्छा
हमने यूनिवर्सिटीज़ की स्टोरी सुनी थी, लेकिन हमने ऐसी स्टोरी नहीं सुनी थी. और टीचर्स ऑफ कोर्स वर वेरी कॉम्पिटेंट एंड वेरी कमिटेड. सो दैट इज़ हाउ इट स्टार्टेड एंड till now I'm in love with the field.
Computer science and that journey, I'd come to that later. There are a couple of things that you said, and I know that you have a young child as well.
Yeah. Two,
mashallah. And what are their ages? If you
Rohan is 2.5 years and Muntaha is about a year.
You mentioned math and you like math. My son is 18 months and आजकल ना उसने I don't even know, like वो YouTube से देख के उसने जो है वो पहले वो 1 2 3 4 करना शुरू किया, तो वो 20 तक पहुंच गया, फिर वो ABC करना शुरू हो गया, फिर वो कल इधर आया हुआ था तो एक बलून था, one of the kids we hired, he got 10K on his Instagram, तो हमने 1 0 और K ला के रखा हुआ था. एंड आई couldn't for the life of me imagine कि ये उस बलून को देखेगा, और तो उसने कहा कि ओके, फिर उसने कहा 10, और वो उसको लेके भागना शुरू हो गया. ये तो खैर एक सेपरेट बैक स्टोरी है, बट फॉर मी व्हाट गॉट मी थिंकिंग वाज के I speak to a lot of people. Yesterday I was talking to the CEO of Food Panda and the director of marketing Food Panda, and I asked them, what were your degrees? You'd imagine एक ने MBA किया हुआ होगा और एक ने शायद marketing BBA MBA, दोनों computer science के थे.
Okay.
Fascinatingly, 40 out of 100 people that I meet जिन्होंने कोई सक्सेसफुल चीज़ की भी हो, वो कंप्यूटर साइंस वाले निकल रहे हैं रिसेंट टाइम्स में. एंड नॉट पर्टेनिंग टू टेक्नोलॉजी ओनली. And a large part of that, when I really thought about it, was and most of these people, if you really think about it, they're good at math, right?
Yeah.
And so math is at the heart and core, and then through that they convert that into problem solving, and through problem solving they eventually convert that into कि वो ठीक है, मतलब albeit कि मैंने fast में शायद प्रोग्रामिंग के ऊपर इतना फोकस ना किया, but I had 97% in math. हाई स्कूल में मैथ वॉज ऑलवेज अ वेरी समथिंग वेरी दिमाग में क्विक चल रही होती थी. एंड सो यू कैन रियली टेक दैट एंड गो इनटू एनी इंडस्ट्री एंड you're able to sort things out. So I would ask you, have you ever thought about the idea of why you were good at math? And if as a parent today, because मुझे नाइटमेयर्स बहुत सारी चीज़ें और नहीं देती कि बच्चा गालियाँ देगा, बच्चा ये, मुझे नाइटमेयर ये देता है कि मेरा बच्चा 10वीं जमात में होगा और आई कहेगा कि अब्बू ये मैथ नहीं समझ आ रही, लाइक भाई तुझे नहीं फिजिक्स समझ आ रही, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, बायोलॉजी नहीं समझ आ रही, मैथ में जो है ना, बिकॉज इट्स सच अ बिल्डिंग ब्लॉक ऑफ लाइफ. सो हैव यू एवर थॉट अबाउट दैट?
So basically I've both of these things, maths and also problem solving and all computer science. The thing that contributed most in my whole career was having good teachers, right? And if I break that down also, by good I mean non-conventional and interactive teachers, right? So they were trying to induce something using their experiences, using some experiments, using logic, right, and making it exciting.
So do you think a bit more practical approach of कि वही वाली बात है कि 4 into 2 को अगर आप 4 तरबूज और 4 तरबूज दोनों को मिलाओ,
exactly types. You make it visual, right? So for example I try to do this, by the way we're coming on to that later on, but I taught it fast also,
right?
And I tried to adopt that into my teaching and I saw extraordinary results. There were, for example, in fast female students would come in and there was a notion that women can't code.
Yeah, absolutely.
अभी भी है, किसी हद तक है, कम हो रहा है, बट उस टाइम एग्जैक्टली ये था कि women can't code. तो जो आपके पास परसेंटेज आती है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल यू गेट 10 females out of 50 or less than that, उनके माइंड पे ऑलरेडी ये होता है कि वी कैन नॉट कोड, एंड देन यू गेट थियोरेटिकल टीचर्स. दे वुड राइट डाउन फॉर लूप on the board and ask you कि ये कैसे चल रहा है and just write it out. So what I used to do is that I tried to find their interests and tie it to problem solving in computer science. For example, a lot of women are interested in clothing, right? I told them that Angelina Jolie की फलानी मूवी के अंदर जो वो ग्राफिक डिजाइनिंग के पर बने हुए हैं, ठीक है, that is computer science for you. You love gaming, right? That is computer science for you.
Yeah.
Whichever industry you're coming from, that is computer science for you. Imagine yourself 10 years, 5 years ahead at that point, and now let's talk about the basics. And then those basics के अंदर भी you try to make it interactive. For example, I still remember Dr. Sip was teaching in introduction to computer science course, a very boring course in our time. And he used to take a packet of Lays with him, and then he used to teach loops using a packet of Lays.
Achha.
So he'll say, okay, what I'm doing it, I'm starting at somewhere. I'm opening the packet. That's the start.
Right.
And then I'm going to eat one by one, right? That's the iterations. And I'll do that till a point when either I'm full or there are no more chips. And then there's the final point that I'll dispose of the wrapper. That is for loop for you.
Yeah.
So you make it interactive, and then people can start implementing them. Math is logical,
yeah.
Right? And the problem solving is logical. So I think with technology now we can do that. We should slowly move away from traditional teaching methodologies and start using more activity-based learning. And I think that has already proven its value.
Montessori and wo sara.
For me, that was somehow automatically happening. I got very good teachers right from the start, also from FSC and in FAST also. So that inherently induced the interest in me. Like I said, I used to do experiments in physics, and that is how I learned physics. Right? I used to do, for example, even in my school, I remember that there was a position of attendant for the lab, right? Or attendant is allowed to enter into the lab anytime.
Right.
So you used to just get in, और वो पढ़ा कि यार अच्छा ये zinc है, अच्छा ये HCl है. I burned a lot of stuff also. harm myself also, but I used to do these things. और उनसे आपकी जो learning होती है वो learning आप traditional methodology से नहीं डाल सकते. With technology, I think now this is very much easy. For example, अगर आप kids की बात करें, Rohan is also learning to do 1 to 3. But normally किस तरीके से there are tools, right? We used to hop up and down stairs, counting stairs. This is how he's learning stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that plays a very vital role in learning overall. And once you teach someone problem solving, that is why you have a lot of people from computer science background. It's not the coding part, it's the problem solving part.
And then you can plug that into anything, and they're going to self learn and they're going to figure it out themselves. Like वो interest आगे फिर interest की game है कि आपने problem solving सिखा दिया, आगे वो अपने interest के अंदर वो.
It applies everywhere. I mean, if you talk to entrepreneurs, they're trying to solve a problem.
Yeah.
If they're focusing too much on the solution, you'll see them they are struggling, right? If they're focusing on the problem and solving the problem through technology, through manual effort, whatever, then they are able to solve it eventually. So problem solving, I think at general. So for example, there are now schools coming up. For example, Saba is running a school, right, in which they are teaching young kids, 10, 11, 12 years old, and they're teaching them using visual coding methods like Scratch. So they'll just ask, okay, ये बिल्ली है, इसको आपने कोने तक मूव करना है, वो कैसे करेंगे? एक स्टेप लेगी तो एंड तक तो नहीं पहुंचेगी, अब क्या करेंगे? 2 स्टेप, नॉट श्योर. कब तक? जब तक एंड पे नहीं पहुंचती स्टेप्स लेने. देयर इज अ ब्लॉक फॉर अ स्टेप, देयर इज अ ब्लॉक फॉर रिपीटिंग दैट स्टेप, एंड देन यू क्लिक ऑन दैट एंड द कैट मूव्स.
Acha, fascinating. So Ma'am Saba is like, is it a proper school?
Yeah, it's called Wipro.
And is it like a part-time school? क्या आप अपने main school जाएंगे और इधर जाके चीजें?
Yeah, it's a sort of part-time. So you can get your kids inducted in that. So it's like summer school, 1 month, 2 months. And based on age, they'll teach you problem solving and these skills interactively.
How cool.
Wipro Code is online. They're teaching on Zoom.
Zabardast. Fascinating. I think Ma'am Saba moved out of Pakistan.
Yeah, she's in UK.
Zabardast. Acha, so you're now in FAST in 2011 and you're interested and now you're sold.
Yeah.
And so what was the journey like 4 years there?
Okay, so the journey was...
Sorry, एक और सवाल.
Yeah.
Because I know that this is something that a lot of people ask me as well, and I know for a fact that I think computer science as a field is interesting because it crosses borders very easily and very quickly, right? It's all digital and so therefore the element of communication becomes incredibly important as well, where just by being an incredible engineer doesn't solve that problem, because it's human beings and services essentially that you're selling, right? What I'm seeing is, you're from this comparatively smaller city. You are from an FSC background, and so these are general stereotypes that people would create immediately कि यार बच्चा smart होगा, comms में तो अच्छा नहीं होगा.
Yeah.
And today when I look at you, the hair are well done, but most importantly, there is a certain level of communication. अच्छा, English is one thing. अंग्रेजी बहुत लोग बोल लेते हैं. But it's really the right usage of language and syntax essentially जो कि आप अपनी thought को communicate करने के लिए use कर लेते हो. Was there something that was there from FSC? Is this a more recent switch in terms of, more recent तो नहीं, but like post university and वो, and what enabled you? Because I know कि बहुत सारे लोग हैं जो कि I mean, fast I know puts a lot of effort there, but for a lot of people they can't. And so beyond university, what were some of the elements that you used to brush yourself up?
Okay, so most of it I think was exposure. So I was coming from a very humble background, government schools and everything. और
वहाँ पे अंग्रेजी तो नहीं होगी थी ज़्यादा.
English भी नहीं थी, and nobody would focus on communication itself, right? So communication में जिस तरह आपने कहा कि they use of right words, and you also have to understand the person sitting in front of you.
Right.
If you're only talking, that's not communicating, right? You have to understand what the person is asking. कभी कभी exact question के अंदर question नहीं होता है, जो बंदा question पूछ रहा है उसके अंदर question होता है, right? So fast contributed a lot in that, just because they put a lot of efforts in generally improving the communication skills. And after that, I luckily got exposure of international clients, companies who were working internationally. For example, when we joined my first company, it was my first interaction with anyone not from Pakistan, right? So I didn't talk to anyone outside Pakistan till then.
So उसमें ये है कि अब आप मतलब आप उर्दू नॉर्मली होता है ना, आप बात करते हो 2 लाइनें इंग्लिश में बोली, फिर आप उर्दू पे रिलायंस करते हो.
वो बैरियर आ गया. वो बैरियर आ गया. You have to convey your thoughts there. So I think the exposure matters a lot. आजकल because of the use of technology and digital stuff, that has become a little easy. उस टाइम पे इतना ज़्यादा नहीं था. Social media was not that much. सिर्फ Facebook यूज़ करते थे और वो भी इतनी ज़्यादा नहीं यूज़ करते थे. So you don't get to talk to a lot of people outside your genre and outside your community. Fast played the first important role in that, and then my exposure to different companies, and there I realized the real importance of exposure. उससे पहले it was just a word कि you're working with someone is exposure, but when you talk to different people from different races, from different nationalities, for example, in my first company there were people working from 15 different nationalities, right? वहाँ पे सिर्फ communication is not important. You have to make sure that you're not offending anyone. You have to make sure that you
Culture
understand their work ethics also.
Yeah.
I mean, they were Chinese working, and they were working like work needs to be done, right?
Yeah.
So you have to understand what they're expecting from you. You have to understand what you should do to communicate. For example, सबसे बड़ा issue ये था कि we used to visit their Berlin office, and there were people from all nationalities, right? And for something as simple as कि आपने नमाज पढ़नी है, right? You have to communicate it to them in a manner that they're not offended. And then there are people from China, there are people from India. You have to keep in mind कि आप work ethics को भी ख़राब नहीं करें. For example, there was a culture कि if there is a meeting, you have to attend the meeting. Or for us, it's okay to come in 30 minutes late. It's default to come in 30 minutes late. You have to understand that it's not common with them.
And Germans are known for their like on spot time, right?
वो 30 minutes से ज़्यादा अगर आप late हैं तो they consider it insult.
हाँ.
And then आपने नमाज़ पढ़नी है, for example, you need a specific prayer room. हमारे साथ female staff था. So you have to communicate these kind of stuff also. It's not all technical.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to communicate with respect.
Yeah.
That's a very important point. और जब हम जनरल पाकिस्तानी वर्कफोर्स की वर्क एथिक्स की बात करते हैं, जब हम बात करते हैं कि कैसे हम अपने IT कल्चर को यूज़ कर सकते हैं, देयर इज़ एक पार्ट है जिसमें बहुत ज़्यादा फोकस करते हैं, विच इज़ द टेक्निकल पार्ट. टेक्निकल कोर्सेज बना दो, हर चीज़ को लोगों के लिए ईजी कर दो, बहुत प्रोफेशनल लेवल तक ले जाओ, एंड देन पीपल वुड लर्न दीज थिंग्स. लेकिन आई थिंक वी आर नॉट फोकसिंग इनफ ऑन वर्क एथिक्स, general personality building of students, someone with the teaching background. So even our universities are not doing that job very well. There are some universities which are focusing on that, but not enough. And there are some universities which are totally not focusing on that. And as an engineer, I think even at early stages, 50% of your work is actually technical and the rest is communicating. You're not working in silos.
Yeah.
You're working with people. You have to communicate all type of information. And I've seen people struggling to communicate, and that is why struggling in their career also.
Yeah.
Issues coming in, they're not able to communicate those issues. They're trying to solve those issues.
Neither are they able to understand the client's requirements,
Exactly.
nor are they able to communicate the potential problems that they might face. And
and this is something that we need to generally fix in our ecosystem. With all digital stuff, I think there are ways to improve this, but this cannot be done purely digital. And here when the importance of a proper institute, a proper university comes in, that you are in a certain environment, you are working with certain students, right? And the university is also putting some effort to incorporate those into you. For example, मुझे भी याद है कि हमारा फर्स्ट सेकंड सेमेस्टर था एंड प्रेजेंटेशंस थी एंड हमने ग्रुप्स बनाने थे और आई थिंक फॉर समवन कमिंग फ्रॉम इस्लामाबाद इट वाज वेरी इजी कि ओके यार ये 3-4 लोग हैं, लेट्स फॉर्म अ ग्रुप एंड एक प्रेजेंटेशन दे देंगे. फॉर अस कमिंग फ्रॉम ऑल दोज बैकग्राउंड, आई मीन not specifically for me, but for people coming from Dadu and Hazro and whatnot, it was actually difficult to talk to someone, okay, let's make a group and pick this topic. This was, and if it wasn't from FAST, a lot of those people would still have those issues. But right now they are head of engineering and starting startups and doing whatnot. So I think that is a very important factor if we want to move our workforce towards global tech leader. This is something that we need to focus on.
Makes sense. So coming back to FAST, what were the 4 years like? Or matlab, how would you sort of summarize that experience?
Awesome. First of all, the reason was that you had access to people who were the best in their fields. You had access to all kinds of equipment, and FAST was known for its academic and industry partnership, so that you would get to know that what's happening in the industry. There were seminars coming in, people coming in and telling us that this is happening in industry, ये fields अच्छी हैं, ये नहीं हैं, ये सब कुछ हो रहा है, and you and then it had a very strong alumni society, right? So you get to talk to people who are working in big companies and they'll support you just because you're FAST in. So एक bond था. For me it was all effortless, alhamdulillah. I started loving coding very, very early. And then all the courses were just like new information coming in. पहले 2 सेमेस्टर्स के बाद समर ब्रेक हुए, everyone was like शुक्र है कि मुसीबत ख़त्म हुई and we are going home. And I spent, I think, the whole summer vacation 5 hours a day building games. That was very start.
And was it like on Unity?
No, not specifically Unity. Building C++ simple games, trying to introduce graphics into them. I made chess. उस टाइम पे नोकिया 3310 होता था, उसमें स्नेक गेम होती थी. इट वाज वेरी फैसिनेटिंग एट दैट टाइम. सो आई मेड अ स्नेक गेम विद विजुअल इफेक्ट्स. सो आई वाज डूइंग ऑल दीज काइंड ऑफ स्टफ. हमने क्लासेस तक पढ़ ली थी, ओके यार क्लासेस को यूज़ करना है, एंड आई यूज्ड टू बी वेरी एक्साइटेड अबाउट इट. दिस इज हाउ इट वेंट. आई वाज गुड इन एल्गोस, आई वाज good in other programming courses, also okay in non-programming courses, but specifically programming courses I loved. So that was the whole journey. It was effortless, very interesting, very exciting for me. I was sort of in love with the field. I still am. And towards the end of the degree, I got this new excitement, which is artificial intelligence.
Right. So during the degree, you had decided that, yaar, this is the space that I want to explore, expand myself in.
So actually that is also a story you might not know of, that I did my final year project with your brother Mohsen. He was in EA Sports at that time.
Acha.
And he was visiting Pakistan, and Dr. Kashif Muri introduced me to him, that this is my batchmate or colleague, and he's looking for someone who can work on a final year project on computer vision, and I want you to do that.
Right.
I met him, he told me the idea, it was all fascinating. He was working in EA Sports, of course. So that is where I started exploring the field slowly. Right. So there were courses on image processing, I took them, so I know the basic idea, but I didn't know the impact. And he was telling me that I'm working in Silicon Valley, and with this technology and the right development, we can build a product that can scale and that can be launched.
Right.
So that is how it started. I started taking more courses. So I think Dr. Sipt was at that time introducing a course on computer vision and image processing. I took that course. He was also the co-supervisor. And that is how I entered into artificial intelligence. We did our FIP. And again, it was so fun.
What was the project?
The project was named SnapThat. And the idea was that you visit some place, for example, you're on vacation, you take an image of that place, you associate something with it. And then whenever someone else would visit that place, they would just open their camera and they would scroll the place and they would see all these pop-ups of other people's memory, all those pictures, some notes, and stuff like that. This was very fascinating.
Very cool, huh?
And again, FAP for us was not FAP because we were building a product. So we were attending all those FAP meetings and presentations, like show them anything. वो जितना किया हुआ उसमें से कुछ दिखा दो. And हमारा फाइनल ईयर डेमो वाज आल्सो लाइक दिस कि हमने सब कुछ किया हुआ था, एंड वी डिजिटाइज्ड ऑल द पोस्टर्स. सो फॉर एग्जांपल जितने भी FAP के ग्रुप्स होते हैं, दे यूज्ड टू हैव अ पोस्टर.
राइट.
So we took pictures of all the posters, associated their names and their CVs to that, उस टाइम पे हम ग्रेजुएट डायरेक्टरी बन रही थी, तो वी एसोसिएटेड द लिंक टू सीवीज, एंड हमारा फाइनल ईयर डेमो वाज लाइक लेट्स गो इनटू द लॉबी, टेक आउट योर फोन, स्कैन एनी पोस्टर एंड यू विल गेट लिंक टू द सीवीज ऑफ दोज गाइज.
Right.
So it was the demo. It was very fascinating, and this is where I decided that I'm going to work in that field. I want to explore this more, and I decided to do MS instead of
So
going to the industry.
why did you do that? Because 2015, you're graduating now.
Yeah.
You're at a fairly high top of the class or at a fairly high CGPA as well. So two questions. First, बंदा कहता है कि यार मैं किताबें आए, और आप हैं भी ऐसे कि यार मैं प्रैक्टिकल आदमी हूँ, राइट? सो आई लव बिल्डिंग. सो उस टाइम के ऊपर तो बंदा, और यूर ऑल्सो द ओल्डेस्ट सन एज वेल, सो कहता है कि यार लेट्स जस्ट गो फाइंड अ जॉब and all the tick marks, right? So would start earning, supporting the family, would go and start building. एक तो ये सवाल है कि why MS versus practical work. दूसरा, having the insight, and now like you mentioned, you're working with someone from the Silicon Valley as well as वो उस तरह से, so you have that insight as well. For a lot of people they're just like अच्छा बस पाकिस्तान में हम दड़बे में, हमें क्या पता यार गोरा करता होगा कुछ. आपके सामने एग्जांपल भी सामने है, तो why choose an MS in Pakistan when you could have easily gotten a scholarship for let's say Germany or so on. There are so many, वही वाली बात है, फास्ट का मैं तो नॉर्मली 5 साल का टाइम देता हूँ, 50% तो 5 साल में बाहर होता ही होता है. हमारे साथ भी हो चुका है. आपका 10-12 का ग्रुप होगा, उसमें से इक्का दुक्का कोई बैठा होगा और वो भी ना व्हाट्सएप पे डिस्कस करता होगा कि यार क्या हालात हैं, निकले क्या सीन है. सो व्हाई डिड यू नॉट डिसाइड टू गो फॉर योर मास्टर्स अब्रॉड?
Okay, so first, why I chose masters. All the checkbox was there, right? I was the only son I had to earn, and then I got good offers from companies even without interviewing, because you're top of the class and everything. But I wanted to learn more about this field. And one opportunity that I was seeing at that time is that Dr. Sipt was here, and he was someone not purely academic background. So he did a PhD from India, working in multiple universities, and then postdoc there, working with big companies. So he got his background from the industry, and he was trying to set up a lab and a research environment there in FAST.
Right.
So that was one thing. Of course, the problem was that I had to earn, right? And at that time, FAST offered a scholarship for masters.
Okay.
So they'll pay for your master's fees, and in return you'll teach, right? You'll be teaching assistant, and then you also get your master's degree.
And the pay is comparative to what you probably
the pay was not comparative to industry, but
at least there's
something bearable, I would say. So that is how it started. The reason why I didn't move abroad was purely family reasons. So I had a couple of sisters here. My father was retired at that time. I was supporting the family, the only child, so I couldn't move abroad and leave them here. So that is how it started.
And this master's was a master's in computer science, or master's in, like, was it more specialized? Okay, master's in AI, or I don't know.
At that time, FAST was only offering master's in computer science or software engineering. So I chose computer science, and then I did my specialization in AI.
अच्छा नहीं, so if I were to ask you, मास्टर्स जनरली होता किस तरह का है? लाइक व्हाट्स बैचलर्स का आपको पता है ना यार, 5 कोर्सेज हैं आपने लेने हैं, चुप करके साइकिल गुजारना है. मास्टर्स में thesis, and then क्या होता है?
Yeah, so the general format is that there are a certain number of courses that you have to take, and then there is a thesis which is also divided into 2 courses. So instead of taking 2 courses, you'll take your thesis, and there is no restriction on publishing anything. You just have to pass the jury for your thesis. So there is no requirement from HEC, but it is considered as a good thing.
Right.
And there are other universities which force you to at least do one publication. For example, in NICT, if you get to a master's degree, you have to at least publish one paper.
And jury is academics or people from the industry?
It's purely academic.
Okay.
So the tricky part in taking decision for masters was not the pay or going abroad. The tricky part was that at that time, masters was considered a purely academic thing, and only people who would not love to go to industry would choose masters.
Yeah.
And that was proved by the type of students you get. Right?
Yeah.
There were people who would not take interest into coding, and सिर्फ इस मास्टर्स इसलिए करना है कि बस मास्टर्स करके हम टीचिंग करेंगे, and that is the dilemma, by the way.
मतलब नौकरी या तो लग नहीं रही, या इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, या वो है तो यार चलो मास्टर्स कर लो, एक्सटेंड कर लो, 2 साल बाद लगा ढूंढ लेंगे.
ऐसे, and also and due to that you also get a not very good pool of teaching assistants. Because FAST introduced this program so that people would become teaching assistants. And FAST didn't used to get a very good lot. If you look at the GPA and everything, or agar unhe threshold karna pade, to there were not a lot of people who would pass the criteria at that time. I was going in with I think 3.8 something, right? So it was a non-linear path, and from here onwards the whole path is non-linear.
Right.
I chose masters just for the sake of being into university, being able to provide myself financially, and then exploring opportunities. So masters for me was nothing for the degree, right? मुझे अभी भी याद है कि अगेन जिस तरह मैंने FAP किया था, उसी तरह जो मेरा मास्टर्स का थीसिस था वो मैंने पहले 1 साल या 1.5 साल के अंदर कर लिया था, एंड आई प्रेजेंटेड दैट एज अ थीसिस एंड इट वाज स्टिल अ वर्क वेक्टर.
Right.
Rest of the time I explored stuff. So what we did is that we founded Reveal Lab, Recognition, Vision and Learning Lab at FAST. Dr. Sipt and Dr. Usman were the faculty members, and we 3 students were the...
Who were the others? Students?
Shehroz Nadeem and Rafia Rahim.
And what are they doing now?
Both of them doing PhDs from abroad, of course.
Right.
One from Germany and one from UK. And Dr. Sipt is also abroad. Dr. Usman is also abroad. I'm the only one here.
You're the only dumb one.
Of course. So this is how it started. And at that time, AI was not that common. So it was a buzzword, and not a lot of universities were teaching courses on AI. So what we did is that we started exploring it ourselves, and then we also tried to democratize it for the whole community. So we tied our partnerships with industry and also with academia. So for example, there was a workshop in which we gave a 5-day workshop purely to teachers from all the other universities. So we did partnership with HEC. HEC funded that workshop, and teachers from 18 to 20 universities, and then other was from industry. For example, Teradata, say, the person who joined that workshop from Teradata after a couple of semesters offered me the job at Teradata.
Achha.
So he was the manager there, so he joined us. So we were doing the kind of stuff that was not happening at that time.
Right.
And it was very interesting for me. We built a lot of products, not specifically paper or research work, but we built a lot of products, and we tried to take them to the market and tried everything. We tried to apply for research grants. उस time fast में कोई GPU नहीं था.
Right.
And AI is nothing without a GPU.
Yeah.
So we tried to ask for funding from FAST. We also applied to NVIDIA. NVIDIA gave us our first K80. It was a very memorable moment for me, at least.
अच्छा, so you like global team से आपने कहा?
Yeah. So
university.
We applied to NVIDIA, and they had this program to support small universities. And they provided us with the latest GPU that they had.
Wow.
And then they later provided with a couple of more. And then we asked FAST कि आप PC के लिए जो भी हमें resources चाहिए, you provide that. GPU हमारे पास आ गया, and then we started building infrastructure so that our students can do that. So we used to use that machine for all the students who were doing work on AI and everything. So it was a very enlightening experience. I was not doing a traditional master's. So I was taking all the courses, and alhamdulillah I was from FAST, so those courses were very easy. I got straight A's throughout. I have 4.0, and that was easy.
Right.
So I was doing other kind of stuff, and the job that I did after my master's was also started as a consulting job during my work as Reveal Lab.
No, so you graduated in 2017.
2018. FAST had a restriction that if you're teaching, then you cannot take more than 2 courses a semester. So
So it was 3 years.
2.5 to 3 years, depending upon time.
Okay, so 18 when you graduate, and then you start a job at
Automotive Artificial Intelligence.
Okay.
And it started while I was at FAST. So what happened is that it was a German startup. The founders were from Audi, 15-20 years in Audi, a lot of experience in the automotive industry. And at that time, self-driving cars were coming up slowly.
Right.
And the problem these companies would have is that they were automotive manufacturers. They were not experts in software.
Right.
So these cars used to have this infotainment system and everything, but that's it.
Yeah.
And now they're building software for the car to run, but they don't have enough expertise to build the tool chain around that software. So this startup, what they were doing is that they were trying to create a simulation environment in which your self-driving software can be tested. And then they used to provide it to all the companies like Porsche, Audi, BMW and everyone. Google and Uber had good engineers, so they can do this kind of stuff themselves, but not all companies were coming into this space. So this was the startup. And the founder was Pakistani German national. And one of the students at our lab started working as a freelancer with them. They liked him a lot. That guy is now at Google, so he was a good guy. And then they said that we want to explore more talent in Pakistan. So the CEO visited Pakistan. He came to our lab. We introduced him to what kind of work we are doing. And then he said that I want to open an office in Pakistan. I want you guys as consultant. So Dr. Sipt and I was consulting them, and we started building their team, telling them which kind of talent is available, how to get that talent. We actually hired the HR ourselves and the whole process. And then when I graduated, I joined them as technical lead for Pakistan. And at that time, there were 4 to 5 people working in Pakistan office, 10 to 15 people working in the German office. And that is where it started. And when I left 2 years after, the team was 120, I guess.
Total
in Pakistan.
In Pakistan alone?
In Pakistan 120. Now wow. They are crossed 200, I guess.
Or ये Islamabad based है?
They are in Islamabad based, and now they also have an office in Karachi.
Wow.
In ISC Towers.
And I mean, by the way, they're doing some cutting edge work. Like they this is not कि Pakistan में है तो यार backdoor work है Pakistan में.
Exactly. They were doing cutting edge work. The whole core AI was happening here in Pakistan. And the reason for joining them was that we were doing some very cool stuff in the lab also, but we were not able to create that impact. Right. The products that we were building sort of eventually die out.
This is more real world.
This is real world. And they said that was the selling point for me, right? Yeah. That whatever we are doing would get to Audi, Bosch and BMW, and it's going to change lives of a lot of people. So you would have impact of what you're building. So I was doing almost the same kind of work, building AI models. They had access to huge data. For example, Didi is a company that is similar to Uber, right, in China.
Right.
We had access to their data. They have dash cams on all of their vehicles.
Achha.
Millions and millions of videos, right? This whole footage. And we were working on that kind of data. We built infrastructure here, and we built our team here. We then started slowly hiring remotely and also in German. So we built the whole team. I was part of their whole evolution, and that contributed a lot in me also to understand how companies work on scale. I used to visit their Berlin office, and then unke board members ke andar VP of Audi was involved, and some other big names, Continental was involved. So I get that exposure also.
Right.
And I spent 2 years there, and then I decided to leave.
Why?
There were 2 reasons. First of all, I went through a surgery, right? And that was sort of a break for me that led me to think more about all the priorities, what type of work I'm doing. At Automotive Artificial Intelligence, I was very involved, and the role was very intense. So there was very bad work-life balance on one side. On the other side, since I built the whole thing from ground up, I was able to understand the whole process. I wanted to take a taste of something else.
Right.
So these 2 things mainly contributed towards me exploring other opportunities, and then I landed towards keep trucking. Currently motive. And for most people, when they're in this space, fast se wo graduate karte hain, good academic background, they can go abroad. You do your masters, you're done with your masters 4.0, you can go abroad. You end up in a startup accidentally, and so you start working, but it's a German-based startup where you're actively, visiting the team there as well. Yeah. And so you have the network, and you have the, I would also say, the sway to easily move abroad. Yeah.
कितना ही मुश्किल है ना. I'm sure आपने कॉन्वर्सेशन, क्योंकि मैं छोड़ना चाह रहा हूँ तो उन्होंने कुछ ना कुछ तो किया होगा यार, तनख्वाह बढ़ा देते हैं यार, तो ये इधर मूव कर लेते हैं क्या है, everybody wants to. पासपोर्ट तो चलो एक मिल ही जाता है, शादी भी हो गई होगी I'm sure उस टाइम तक. But you constantly try to swim against the tide. Is that some sort of a neurotic psychological issue, or what is it? Because I'm sorry I'm saying this, मैं भी खुद ऐसा ही हूँ, but very few people I find जो कि, क्योंकि आपको पता है मेरी family का, right? So it's a constant in your mind, right? And it's a thing कि यार बहुत सारे और लोगों को पता ही नहीं है तो वो नहीं जा सकते, तुम तो जा सकते हो. So are you making a mistake? And so you second guess yourself. And so it takes a lot of courage to really go against what all of your friends are saying and everything else to actually keep yourself grounded and keep staying here.
Yeah, so there are 2 factors majorly contributing that. First of all is that I'm patriotic. And the reason for that is that the whole career started from a scholarship that was offered from the government. So I already had that soft corner that Pakistan has contributed a lot in me. अगर मैं किसी प्राइवेट स्कूल से फीस दे के पढ़ा होता तो आपको एक सेंस क्रिएट हो जाती है कि यार
ठीक है ना, मैंने ही किया ना,
वी आर पेइंग फॉर इट, राइट? सो इन आवर केस इट वाज नॉट द केस फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, एंड देन फास्ट कंट्रीब्यूटेड अ लॉट. So the whole life having all these scholarships created, by the way, there was no contract from NICTs. You just have to serve 2 years anytime, after masters, after PhD, whenever, but you have to serve 2 years and that's it. So there was no contract, but there was this love for the nation and the way nation has contributed towards me, and sort of this sense of giving back for once. For example, when I was offered this job, initially I was offered the job as the Berlin office. So they said वहाँ पे आ जाओ and हम वहाँ से बैठ के ये वाली टीम बनाते हैं. You are from Pakistan तो तुम्हें सारी dynamics पता है, and then you can come here on ground and everything. And I said कि I'll only join if you offer me the same job at Pakistan office. So technically I was getting the benefit of being German. So I was hired for the German office. I was getting paid in euros.
Right.
And I was working in Pakistan office.
Right.
So by doing this, it created a sort of sense in me that all the problems that we have locally, right? So यहाँ से पीपल क्यों जाना चाहते हैं लोग, कहते हैं यहाँ ये मसला है, ये मसला है, ये मसला है. And the problem is, again, that problem solving mindset. You're not focusing on the problem, you're focusing on the solution. बस बाहर भाग जाओ and everything is done. हर बंदे के साथ different problems हैं, ठीक है. अगर for example आपके पास financial issues हैं, या a lot of people go कि हमें यहाँ से, हमें पाकिस्तान में कोई काम नहीं हो रहा, हम बाहर चले जाएंगे और हम दरख्तों से पैसे तोड़ लेंगे. That doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
तो आपको कि यहाँ पे एफर्ट्स करनी है, आपको वहाँ पे भी एफर्ट्स करनी है. देयर इज़ ऑल्सो दिस ऑलवेज दिस करेंसी एक्सचेंज एंड एवरीथिंग, जिसकी वजह से द मनी यू आर अर्निंग गेट्स अ लॉट मल्टीप्लाइड, बट यू हैव टू फोकस ऑन इंडिविजुअल प्रॉब्लम्स, राइट? फॉर मी देयर वाज ओनली फाइनेंशियल इशू लिटिल बिकॉज आई वाज अर्निंग गुड मनी, एंड देन my parents are here, their roots are very well connected with Pakistan, all my family is here, so I'm not that kind of a guy who's sort of selfish in a way that okay मेरी life है तो मैंने बनाना है. So I used to, मेरा brought up इस तरह से है कि आपने सबको साथ लेके चलना, right? My mother, my father has contributed a lot, तो मैंने I have to make sure कि उनकी comfort है.
So that cultural context also played.
And then the only problem is money, right? Sort of. And the first job that I landed was doing both at the same time.
Yeah, and was giving you, like, the only constraint that you might have was solving that problem.
It was solving the problem. I was living in Pakistan, earning in euros, so not being hit by inflation and everything. And I was doing something for the Pakistani community. Now imagine we started with 4 people, we ended up with 100 people. I was get to decide the salaries. I would get to decide the benefits. There were people coming in and asking for 40,000 rupees. And we would give them 80,000. Because I would say that according to the market, this guy deserves this, and this is the plan that we. So I get to decide a lot of things in their coal culture that helped immensely Pakistan. A lot of my students got in that company, and then they started this annotation program in which they used to annotate images. It was a very low entry job, and they started a procedure of hiring dumb people for that. Right, the people wouldn't listen, but you train them somehow, and I think 20% of the workforce is like this, and they're earning good money.
Yeah.
Then we started taking initiatives. I was all impressed by this NICT scholarship, and it got stopped. So I had to do something. We introduced a scholarship program by Automotive AI in Fast, and we funded a couple of students, fully funded.
Right.
So I was able to create this impact, and I thought that I might not be able to do this if I moved abroad. वहाँ जाके सिर्फ जो मैं बेनिफिट कर सकता हूँ, ठीक है, शायद आई बिल्ड टेक्नोलॉजी जो कि लोगों को हेल्प करी होगी, लेकिन वो इम्पैक्ट जो मैं पाकिस्तान में रह के क्रिएट कर रहा हूँ, शायद मैं वो वाला इम्पैक्ट नहीं क्रिएट कर सकता. द ओनली प्रॉब्लम इज मनी, द प्रॉब्लम इज सॉल्व्ड.
Right, makes sense. So you moved to Motive, and you're now at Motive still.
I'm now at Motive, yeah.
2022 चल रहा है, right?
Yes.
Motive is fairly, I mean, we've discussed that. We'll be discussing that also with their team as well. So मैं उससे थोड़ा सा हटूँगा because we're already at the 1 hour mark. And there's ये normally हमने plan किया था कि ये सारा हम 30 minutes में wrap up करेंगे. So कुछ मैं थोड़ा सा लेफ्ट राइट जाऊँगा और एरियाज़ में. पहला तो let's just talk about AI generally. You know, is AI a buzzword at this point in time? For most part. So AI is selfie. AI, you know, this AI that, is it a marketing gimmick? And how would you differentiate between the areas जहाँ पर वो actually marketing gimmick use हो रही है और जहाँ पर वो actually real world environment में बड़े रियल तरीके से इम्पैक्ट जनरेट कर रही है.
Right. So it started with sort of marketing tactics, or not necessarily marketing tactics. Ignite technology is coming in and it's doing wonders. We have not seen real impact yet, but we can see the potential, and the grass is whole green. So AI would change everything. It started like this, and that bubble sort of busted in a way. Right, people got to know the reality and limitations of AI systems. So there are startups who came in that will do everything with AI, and they were not able to achieve realistic results because real world is a reality check in true meaning. Right, you train an AI model, you train it in lab settings on some data, and then the moment it get in touch with the real data,
things start falling
apart. It's a different game.
Yeah,
right? But I think there is also some reality to it. Right, it is creating real impact now. For example, but the work we are doing at Motive, we already have some research papers that coming in, and some independent companies doing research, and they have found that these products have significantly reduced accidents. Right? So saving money and also saving lives in true way. So I think AI has some potential, but we have to also take a look at the reality check. It cannot do everything, but it can definitely automate some repeating tasks and can do some tasks better than humans, and we can utilize that potential.
Make sense. अगर मैं इसको Web 2.0 के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में लेकर आऊँ कि अर्ली डेज के अंदर everybody was like this is gonna change the world. 99, 2000 it was booming and everything internet is gonna make money and so on. फिर 2001 में bubble burst करता है. People begin to realize कि अच्छा यार इसकी limitations भी हैं, इसमें technology भी आपको चाहिए, चलेगा तो सही लेकिन it's gonna take some time, and so it didn't die out कि completely devastate हो गया, but ये है कि it sort of regulated itself into a more practical way, and then over that 10-year period we saw the rise of Google and Facebook and वो. अगर मैं 2000 से 2010 पे लेकर हूँ, 2010 being the time जब बिल्कुल excitement peak पे थी और like Snapchat was being कि जी इतने का बिक जाएगा, तो Instagram इसने ख़रीदा $3 billion की डील, $5 billion की डील, और वो कॉन्स्टेंटली, और माइक्रोसॉफ्ट आके नोकिया को ख़रीद रहा है, एंड डिजिटल इज़ एवरीथिंग, राइट. वेयर डू यू थिंक AI स्टैंड्स टुडे? बिकॉज अगर मैं वैसे देखूँ तो बात होती है बार बार 2020 से मैं सुन रहा हूँ कि अगले 10 साल में AI इंजीनियर्स इतने चाहिए होंगे, अगले 10 साल में AI ये कर लेगी, AI इज़ गोइंग टू ऐड X अमाउंट टू द वर्ल्ड GDP, एंड यू आर सेइंग कि द बबल हैज़ बर्स्ट एंड इट्स बिकम मोर फोकस्ड नाउ. और वो जनरली आपको बबल बर्स्ट होता नजर आया था जब मुझे जैसे लोग आगे कह रहे होते हैं कि यार ये बज़वर्ड है, राइट. सो वो चीज़ तो हमें होती हुई आई गेस नज़र आ गई है, बट अब एक्सेलरेशन में किस पॉइंट पे? आर वी इन द रिसर्च फेज, आर वी इन द अर्ली अडॉप्टर प्रैक्टिकल इम्प्लीमेंटेशन? जनरली अर्ली अडॉप्टर में वही होता है ना कि आप एंटरप्राइज सोल्यूशंस बना रहे होते हैं, आप उस तरह की चीज़ें कर रहे होते हैं, और इज़ इट नाउ बिगिनिंग टू गो इनटू द एक्सेलरेटेड फेज जिसके अंदर वी आर गोइंग टू नाउ in a practical way start solving a whole lot more problems with AI than we were doing, let's say, 5 years ago?
I think it's in its second phase of rise, right? The first phase was with very less knowledge and almost excitement, right? Okay, companies would simply attach AI buzzword to them and they'll get funded, right? People would only attach AI to their resumes and they'll get hired. Companies wouldn't know what to look for in an AI engineer, and AI engineer wouldn't know that what I'm needed for. आप उसको डेटा साइंस कह लें, आप उसको एनालिटिक्स कह लें, आप उसको AI कंप्यूटर विजन डीप लर्निंग कह लें, आप उसको कोई भी लेबल दे लें. इनिशियली इट वाज लाइक दिस. स्लोली कंपनीज रियलाइज कि सिर्फ 10 AI इंजीनियर्स हायर करने से वी कैन नॉट सॉल्व अ प्रॉब्लम. वी हैव टू फिगर आउट व्हाट द प्रॉब्लम इज and then what's needed to solve that problem. So I think it's in the second phase now. People are seeing the real impact of it, right? Companies like us, there are a lot of companies using AI and doing actually the work that wouldn't be possible without it. For example, just as an example, that while we are sitting here, our AI system had received, I think, some 20,000 videos, and it had figured out how many of those videos were actually close following events in which the person was driving very dangerously in front of the other vehicle, and it has generated alert for the fleet manager that this driver is driving dangerously, so please do some coaching on everything, right? So it has predicted, while we are sitting here, 20,000 of those possible incidents might have stopped.
Right.
You're going to do this with human annotators. We tried, by the way.
Yeah.
We tried keeping human annotators who would get the video and see what's happening, but that's not scalable.
Right.
In Motive, we get somewhere around 100,000 videos a month.
Right.
That's huge. imagine the amount of workforce required to do that, and then to do that accurately. With the AI model, we are doing that very accurately. We are beyond 94-95% accuracy. So if you pick up your cell phone and you take it to your ear, before you are able to hear the voice, the camera would talk to you that drive safely. Right. And it would record the video, send it to the fleet manager. These kind of things were not possible before AI. So we are starting to see real impact, and the companies have learned that what type of engineer do they need. AI is not only AI, no engineering. You need people with good knowledge in mathematics and their basics in linear algebra and calculus, everything there, and then they should be able to build a model that works, and then they should be good engineers also. There was also a dilemma in the start के आप 2 courses करें, NUNG का course देख लें और बेशक आप उसकी कोई assignment कुछ ना करें, आप just videos देखें, आपको buzzword आ गए, you clear the interview and then you get in. AI is nothing without engineering, so it has to fit in the ecosystem. Companies have started to realize that, and then I think while realizing that, we should be able to create more products that are actually creating impact. So it's in the second phase, I think.
Interesting. और ये बड़ी आपने मज़े की बात बोली, because as with all innovation, the scaremongers also start coming in and say, okay, yeah, it's going to take your jobs and it's going to ruin the market. But for example, you guys have a product that didn't have any human jobs to begin with. So it's really solving a problem जो कि literally machine ही solve कर सकती है. You're not gonna have like 500,000 people sitting at some part of the world trying to monitor truck drivers to see whether they हो. तो it's not like it reduced any jobs. As a matter of fact, the only thing it did was increase jobs in engineering and actually increase productivity on the
exactly. People are now doing jobs which they are meant to do.
Yeah.
Right. So for example, take call centers, for example. Now they are conversational agent who can do the initial talking, and only when the guy is about to decide, then you get to transfer to a human. Imagine the scale we can do with this. 100 people can be replaced with this, and those 100 people can be used to make 1,000 sales.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's taking your job, it's giving you another job with more meaningful impact, with something a human is meant to do. For example, in our case, thousands of people would have to just look at videos and say yes, no.
Yeah.
And that's not a human's job. That's no mind is involved, you're not contributing anything, you're not creating a value, and then that's not scalable.
Yeah.
So AI is replacing job, it's taking your job, providing you another job with more meaningful impact, and then it's also doing the jobs which didn't exist earlier.
Makes sense. Tell me a little bit about last question on the AI front. You've historically worked on transportation, both with automotive AI and now I believe with motive as well. And again, I don't want to dive too deeply into motive because they're early stage trade secrets. But beyond automotive, what are some of the early adopters that you're beginning to see now, जो कि जहाँ पर आपको लगता है कि यार ज़ाहिर है बहुत सारी एरियाज़ हैं जहाँ पर आपका डेटा तो एग्जिस्ट करता है बट नॉइजी डेटा है, गंदा डेटा है, उसके साथ खेलते खेलते टाइम लगेगा, देखने पड़ेगा सोल्यूशंस क्रिएट करने में. बट कुछ चीज़ें आपको बड़ा ना, जब एक चीज़ आप कर लेते हो आपको लो हैंगिंग फ्रूट्स नज़र आने शुरू होते हैं. यार अगर ये पॉसिबल है तो वो भी पॉसिबल है ना. हेल्थ केयर में बहुत सारी चीज़ें आपको नज़र आ जाती हैं, टेस्टिंग के अंदर, स्कैन्स के अंदर, वो बहुत सारे एरियाज़ में आ जाता है. सो इन योर ओपिनियन व्हाट आर सम ऑफ द अर्ली एरियाज़ दैट वी आर गोइंग टू सी पोस्ट ट्रांसपोर्टेशन जहाँ पर AI का इम्पैक्ट बड़ा क्लियर नज़र आना शुरू हो जाएगा? और एज अ एड ऑन टू दिस क्वेश्चन, अगर इसी जो आप बता रहे होंगे इसमें अगर आप हमें एंटरप्राइज वर्सेस कंज्यूमर भी बता सकें कि यार यहाँ पर तो आपको शायद एंटरप्राइज में के एरियाज़ में नज़र आना शुरू हो B2B, बट यहाँ पर शायद हमें डायरेक्ट टू कंज्यूमर भी नज़र आना शुरू हो जाए जिसमें रियल इम्पैक्ट एंड रियल again, selfie cam with a blurred background for me is not that much of an impact, but maybe something more day to day,
Yeah, so I think medical imaging and magical domain is one of the areas in which it would have a very strong impact. And one of the reason of thinking that is that I was also had an experience in which I was diagnosed wrongly, right? And that impacted me in a lot of ways. Secondly, I think in terms of communicating, conversation, the way we are communicating between us and the way we are communicating with the machines, that's an area that is going to be changed a lot. For example, there are companies coming in who would take your natural language input and do tasks that you used to do and used to learn with a painful process. For example, imagine having Photoshop in front of you and being able to talk to Photoshop and do the stuff without actually learning to do Photoshop. That is going to change the way we use computers, we use machines, and that has an impact both on B2B business would have to adopt, and then also consumer would have to adopt, and consumer would be impacted also. So I think, these are the two main areas which are going to be affected very soon.
So what I understand is first is image based,
medical domain,
and
mostly image,
natural language based,
natural language processing.
क्योंकि उसमें फिर और भी areas आ जाएंगे जो off camera when I was talking to you, for example. So Saba founder was here and he was speaking about, they're primarily targeting, he was like, early on we want to target your middle income sort of educated audience and really get them to be on Saba, and then eventually we'll see how do we solve the bigger problem. And I asked him, I was like, to some level, sure, the experience might be really poor, but that's what the banks are doing as well, right? At the end of the day, your average middle income educated kid is gonna at some point open up a bank account. And so for me, the real value is not necessarily in whether you're tapping on the freelancers or you're tapping on the middle income educated folks. The real value is when you're really targeting the working class, and a large part of that working class, so they're huge in number. They're really driving the 70% of the economy, जो कि आपके SME sector से जा रही है. But they're also, unfortunately, they're the ones जो कि conventionally हमारी economics से बाहर रहते हैं. So they're the ones who never went to proper schools, literacy rate के मसले हैं. And so I told him a couple of, for me, were very interesting user experiences. First being WhatsApp voice notes, which completely changed the way that these guys used WhatsApp, right? So they didn't have to write or read anything.
Exactly.
They would just tap on a button, रटा लगा दिया start में, नहीं आता तो नहीं आता, but button दबाओ और communication start, right? And that's a fundamentally different way of how you can begin to communicate and do tasks. And उसमें आप देखें तो shopkeepers ने shops बना ली, तो 10 लोगों ने 10 चीज़ें कर ली and वगैरह. दूसरा मेरे जो interesting था वो था TikTok, where on Instagram you still have your upper middle class and sort of your very sort of educated crowd, but on TikTok, you're getting everyone. And a large part of that was that Instagram के ऊपर when you open the app, you have to sign in. At least 4 fields आपको provide करनी है: first name, second name, email address and password. TikTok पे you open the app and the content is there.
Yeah.
And a large part of even signing up is, अगर आप कुछ दे सकते हो दे दो. अगर आप देखें ना 90% यूजर नेम है user 00047
randomly generated.
And so they understood कि यार हमें, how do we make it so fluid that there is no barrier to entry? And obviously that's a content platform, but for me, again, वो अगर content platform is also a product, right? Like that's the product that they're dealing with. So how can you use the same sort of design language and convert that into financial services, which is a slightly more regulated and obviously complicated and risky as well, but still have to. तो मैंने उनको ये recommend किया, मैंने कहा जी, why don't you do a Sada Panda type, mascot who just, you open the app and suddenly now there's a Sada Panda and he's speaking to you, right? So immediately on the get-go, he's like, oh, आप Sada पे आ गए, आज आप क्या करना चाहेंगे? And पहले तो आप अपना नाम बताएं. अभी the person can't read or write, but he can say his name. आपने नाम बताया, उसने नाम को रिपीट किया, क्या आपका यही नाम है? ओके जी वो है. तो वो उस तरीके से there can be a very intuitive sort of user experience as we get that technology of text to speech to text and so on. And then once you're in with the sign up process, you can also then begin to ask these people a lot of other things beyond the clutter, because you open Easy Paisa, for example, and it's a billion icons.
Yeah.
Whereas you open this app and you're like, आज आप क्या करना चाहेंगे? वो आपको साथ साथ बता भी रहा है. वो कह रहा है आपके अकाउंट में 25,000 रुपये पिछले 2 महीने से पड़े हुए हैं. आप अगर इसको चाहते हैं कि कहीं इन्वेस्ट कर दें तो स्टॉक्स में मैं आपके लिए इन्वेस्ट कर सकता हूँ, मैं आपके लिए कर सकता हूँ. And so for that user, it suddenly becomes like a partner. So personal assistant का element है.
Exactly.
And I think when we're looking at personal assistants, we're consistently looking at these sort of series of the world and the Google assistants. And I think there's an incredible value of these sort of sandboxed individual applets, personal assistants, जो कि अभी हम देख ही नहीं रहे.
There is sort of a technology barrier there in a way that these generalized personal assistants, they don't have access to your app's data, right?
Right.
And the companies would not allow them to have that access. So I think what you're saying is pretty much possible. In fact, I was also in conversation with a couple of companies, and it's not only having clutter within one application, it's also having to use different applications. Every application has its own features, and the more features are introduced, the more clutter are introduced, and then it's very hard to use. And I think AI technology is already there, with which you can build conversational agents which can talk to you in Urdu.
Right.
I think we also did some demos. We did some demos in which you can even talk to them with Urdu. There is stuff happening in Pakistani labs. A friend of mine was working in LUMS in their Urdu lab, and they have their conversational agent which can talk to you about stuff, understand your what you're saying, pick specific keywords or specific items from that, and then do the task that you want. So I think that is the real change that might happen, not specifically in the banking industry, but also all kinds of. I mean, if you can do that for banks, you can do that for
anyone,
for Food Panda, for Careem, and for ride-hailing services.
The idea essentially is to create products that are much more inclusive.
Exactly.
Than historically has been available.
And in our own domain language, right?
Absolutely.
So in Urdu. So I think that's doable, and that's another consumer impact that can happen.
Makes sense. Okay, so you mentioned healthcare, and you said your own sort of diagnostics went wrong. Tell me a little bit about what that experience was and what happened there.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with fibromatosis. It's a form of non-cancerous tumor around 2018. And that diagnosis was sort of, again, very interesting story. I went for the medical checkup for something else, and the physician felt that, okay, so you have this mass on the side of the chest.
Was it like painful, or was it at
it
this
wasn't
point
painful.
In time? Okay.
It was just, so it was like something like you pulled a muscle from exercise.
Right.
So I talked to the physician and said, let's see what it is. So he did this ultrasound and then the CT scan. And what happened is that I was there to collect the report. I collected the report, and the doctor was not there. So I looked at the report and then I Googled it. And I fainted. So the diagnosis written there was left-wing sarcoma, I guess. And there was someone from the industry, very famous those days, someone from, very active on Facebook and Insta, a girl who has left-wing sarcoma, and she was left with a couple of years, and she was doing all these activities and getting so much traction, and I saw her somewhere. So I Googled left-wing sarcoma, and the first thing that came out was that you have maximum 2 years.
Right.
Someone coming from a very humble background, then getting into technology, everything, now supporting my family. My father is retired. And I'm sitting here and thinking that what would I do if I have 2 years left?
And were you married at the time?
I was engaged at the time.
Wow.
And sitting at the chair, I was thinking, how would I break that engagement? Because I cannot ruin the life of someone else. So it was a game changer for me. It was a life-changing moment. After that, I went to a couple of oncologists. They did their diagnosis. For a couple of months, it was left as left-wing sarcoma. And then finally...
So for 2 months, you believed you had cancer?
For 2 months, I believed I had cancer. And the
2 years to live.
That type which had 2 years to live.
Oh my God, the trauma that must have
And I couldn't
caused
tell my
you.
family.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah, I couldn't tell my family because I'm very attached to my father and mother.
Yeah.
And I knew
They would have,
that
they would have
kill me. It would kill them, right?
Yeah.
And I took it on myself, I think.
Did you tell anyone else? Did you have a support system at the time?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So I think that support system is very, very important.
Yeah.
For me, it was my friends.
Right.
मैं डॉक्टर की विजिट्स के लिए जाता था. I would take someone with me, कोई दोस्त साथ है, एंड वो हर तरह से दे सपोर्टेड मी, राइट. और इस तरह के मौक़ों पे आई थिंक यू नीड दैट सपोर्ट सिस्टम अ लॉट. वी डोंट अप्रिशिएट इट इनफ, स्पेशली विद द डिजिटल इकॉनमी एंड एवरीथिंग. आपके फेसबुक पे 1000 फॉलोअर्स हैं एंड यू डोंट टॉक टू समवन फिजिकली, एंड व्हेन यू गेट हिटन बाय समथिंग लाइक दिस, you need someone to discuss this with physically, right? आपको कोई ऐसा बंदा चाहिए who you can rely on. For me, it was my friends.
Right.
They supported me a lot throughout those 2-3 months until the diagnosis was happening. I used to live at their place a lot because घर में मेरी शादी की तैयारियां चल रही थी. My mother was deciding the dresses. God. So yeah, that happened.
Wow. And so what was the time when you घर पे शादी की तैयारियां चल रही हैं, you're thinking कि यार मैं तो मरने वाला हूँ, ये क्या हो रहा है? Anyway, I can't even begin to imagine. So hats off to you for surviving that. But so what happened? Like at what point did you realize, or were you told कि यार भाई ये क्या scene है? This is something interesting.
Yeah, so it happened I think 3 months after. Diagnosis हो रहा था, and the doctors were not sure. Initial diagnosis was this, and then they did an autopsy in which they put a needle inside and then they take a part of the mass just to study it in the lab. So it came out as fibromatosis, which is a very aggressive tumor, but it's not cancerous,
right?
Non-cancerous, right? So they said कि इस तरह surgery होगी, and it was a major surgery because the mass was inside the ribs, passing through the ribs. So it was a major surgery. They had to remove a couple of ribs also.
So at what point did you involve your parents?
1 week before the surgery.
अच्छा.
And the whole reason was that I figured everything out. I figured ऑफिस में कितनी छुट्टियां लूँगा, क्या होगा, फाइनेंशियल्स कैसे पूरे होंगे, इंश्योरेंस कितना सपोर्ट करेंगे. I figured everything and then I slowly told them कि
for me it was 3 days before. वो अमेरिका में थे, मैंने कहा यार इनको बता दिया ना तो you know.
So I told them I think 1 week before the surgery. The surgery happened, alhamdulillah. All went well.
कहाँ से करवाई थी आपने?
शिफा से.
अच्छा. Was that experience good? No?
It was a very good experience.
Okay.
2 to 3 surgeons were involved, plastic surgeon and then oncologist and later on radiations also. But it was a good experience, and I came out of that. But that sort of affected me in a lot of ways that I couldn't imagine at that time. First of all, I realized the importance of having a support system. And then secondly, I realized the importance of talking about these issues openly.
Right.
For me, it was a special scenario that I couldn't. But there are people struggling with all kinds of issues and they don't talk to anyone.
Right.
What happened to me is that after that, I became way too sensitive for a certain duration, so that I wasn't able to even do my job properly. I would just wake up and say, I'm not going to go to the office. क्योंकि ऐसे हो सकता है, हो सकता है मैं काम ना कर पाऊँ, and हो सकता है कि ऐसे हो जाए. और मुझे रिज़ाइन कर देना चाहिए, and I should leave everything because of the whole thing that I went through. और उस टाइम पे I realized the importance of mental health. हमारी पूरी सोसाइटी में we consider that as a taboo. अगर आप किसी साइकेट्रिस्ट के पास जा रहे हैं तो आप पागल हैं. It was same for me, and luckily a friend of mine had his brother who was practicing in psychology, and he had very good practice, studied from Germany, and so he said कि भाई से बात कर लेते हैं and कोई मसला नहीं है. I said कि मुझे मसला क्या है? कहते कोई मसला नहीं है, भाई कह रहे हैं मैंने मिलना है, let's talk to him. And then I realized the importance of mental health and how that works, right? The problem is that when you're overthinking, you're not able to discriminate between the possibility and something that is not possible.
Right.
And you're just building up scenarios which are not possible, but on the basis of that you get more and more anxiety, and it's a loop that you are stuck in.
Right.
So what he did was simply talk to me. I said मुझे ये टेंशन है, ये हो जाएगा. कहते हैं फिर क्या होगा? मैं कि ये हो जाएगा, फिर क्या होगा, ये हो जाएगा. That's not possible. कुछ दिन पहले कैसे चला था? सब ठीक चल रहा था, तो अब क्या हुआ? मेरी सर्जरी हो गया. You're the same person you are. You have passed through a procedure. The people who did that procedure do that procedure every day.
Yeah.
It's common for them, right? You've been through something. You'll come out same as you were. You're the same person. You have the same mind. Nothing would happen. And he told me, okay, do this, talk to yourself and slowly improvise. There is one way to go towards medication.
Right.
And there is one way that you handle this yourself and you'll come out stronger. I decided to handle it myself and I came out stronger. With all that support system, talking to a psychiatrist and everything, what that did was that I am now able to handle stress in a very good manner.
Mm.
And an example of that is that I was again diagnosed with the same problem. And a year later, it started growing again. First time उन्होंने किया ये था कि उन्होंने mass remove किया, उन्होंने उसको lab test किया, उन्होंने कहा जी margins are positive, nothing is wrong, so हम radiate नहीं करेंगे. Usually there is a post radiation step. So secondly, 6 months बाद हम CT scan करते हो तो a year later they figured that it has started going again in the same vicinity. तो उसके बाद they decided again an operation. Now if you compare that to the first operation, during my second operation I was starting another business and I was handling construction from from hospital. I was recently married. I was also giving an interview to switch to motive at that time. By the way, motive has a very high scrutiny process. They have 7 interviews. Some of them I attended from the hospital. Wow. I was able to handle stress in a very good manner. So I came out stronger.
Right.
But I want this to be out there and people to realize that if you're going through something, you have to talk to someone about it. You need to have a support system. If you do not have a support system, talk to a psychiatrist. It's not a taboo anymore. They do career counseling, for example. My friend's brother, one of his degrees is career counseling.
Interesting.
So we think it's taboo, but it's generally something.
And even with your friends being that support system, I think वो levels भी है ना कि certain things you need a psychiatrist for, or you need that sort of a stranger जिसमें आपके दोस्त आपको बोलेगा कि यार तुझे समझ नहीं आ रही यार, तू वो नहीं है, तो it's okay. Like ये नहीं है कि अच्छा like I have friends, I'm gonna talk to my friends, मैं क्यों psychiatrist के पास जाऊँ. फ्रेंड्स के एक अपना रोल है, या एक फैमिली फ्रेंड्स whatever जो आपके सोशल सर्कल है, बट देन सर्टन एरियाज़ के अंदर जब आपको नज़र आ रहा है कि यार मेरी जो एवरीडे लिविंग है वो इम्पैक्ट होना शुरू हो गई है, तो देन आई थिंक इट्स इम्पोर्टेंट टू गो टू अ प्रोफेशनल.
Yes, definitely. And I think we should practice this more. For example, after the surgery till now, I used to visit him for all kinds of situations, how to be more productive, how to handle my day, how to spend my time with family, how to do this work-life balance and all kind of stuff. And it's helped a lot.
Okay, so I'm gonna move to the last part of the things that we wanted to talk about. And you mentioned Maveshi farms. Now again, people who जो अभी तक बैठे हुए हैं यहाँ पर, they're listening to a journey of an individual who's inherently all about tech, right? And he's an engineer, he's a problem solver, and it's very very, वो काफ़ी दफ़ा ऐसे होता है ना कि हम चीज़ों को जब देखते हैं तो हम बड़ा ईजिली स्टेरियोटाइप करते हैं. हम कहते हैं कि यार ये तो टेकी टाइप बंदा है. वो टेकी टाइप लोग जब नॉन टेकी टाइप्स को देखते हैं वो कहते हैं पागल है, क्या कर रहा है. एंड सो वी टेंड टू क्रिएट आवर ओन हर्ड्स एंड वी look for opportunities and things within that herd. For an average technology guy, getting into business is already something joke is out of his comfort zone. But getting into business, which is inherently stereotypically rural, is an entirely different ball game. You co-founded Maveshi Farm. You mentioned that a couple of times as well. Even during your surgery, you were doing construction there as well. What's Maveshi Farms and why is it so important?
Okay, so Maveshi Farms is an organic farm in which we are providing breeding and raising animals for Qurbani purposes and for meat purposes, and we are doing all of that as organically as possible. Why I shifted towards that, it was again natural, not like I was finding a problem to solve and then ending up there. It was like solving my own problem and then moving towards solving others. So मुझे हमेशा से जानवरों का शौक़ था. एंड देन जब मैं बड़ा हुआ और मैं खुद से कुर्बानी करने लगा एंड ऑल दैट, सो आई यूज्ड टू गेट एन एनिमल अर्लियर एंड देन रेज इट, और वो आपको एक एसोसिएशन क्रिएट हो जाती है एंड देन यू सेक्रीफाइस दैट. एंड द रीज़न फॉर दैट इज़ दैट आई एम अ ट्रू बिलीवर इन कीपिंग द सेंस ऑफ sacrifice in Qurbani. Right now what's happening is that we are getting so hands off that it's becoming more of an expensive
consumer
meat,
item,
expensive meat, right? Double priced meat instead of the whole sense. So I want myself to be reminded kya kare, what's the whole process. And I have a son, so I want my son also to be reminded that this is something you're sacrificing, and if you're not attached with that thing, then it's not technically a sacrifice. So I used to do that. To solve that, what I did is that I took some place near to my house, half hour away, and partnered with some person.
Was this at the time a rental space?
It was a rental space at that time. I partnered with someone who was there living nearby, and he was able to take care of the animals. So मैं करता ये था कि एक बैल ले लिया, महीना पहले ले लिया, and then वहीं रहेगा क्योंकि cities के अंदर you cannot keep that. And once I did that for a couple of years, I figured कि people might have similar problems, शहर में रह रहे हैं, and they might be forced to use these other options available. क्योंकि आप शहर के अंदर कोई जानवर रख नहीं सकते, आप रखेंगे तो आप खुराक कहाँ से लाएंगे, आप उसे संभालेंगे कैसे, जॉब करें and all that. So that is where I founded Maveshi Farms, and the idea was that we want to keep alive this true spirit of Qurbani, keeping in mind that you have all these problems in cities, right? So what we can do is that we'll raise the animals ourselves. You can buy the animal, let's say a month before or 2 months before. You can visit whenever you want. You get updates of all of that. So you get an association with your animal. यार ये मेरा जानवर है. And then right before Eid, we can deliver anytime you want.
Right.
Even ईद के दिन में भी, ईद से एक दिन पहले, 2 दिन पहले. And then जब आप कुर्बानी कर रहे हैं शहर के अंदर, there is this hygiene issues, right? आपको जगह जगह पे प्रॉब्लम नज़र आती है. तो we can provide butchers also who would do this in a professional way. So this is how it started. That was the phase 1 of Maveshi farm. I did that for a year, and then we slowly pivoted.
Right.
The
Why?
pivot. Yeah. So again, the pivot was again natural because I'm a hands-on guy. So either that is tech or that is bakre and well and all that. तो जब हम परचेजिंग करते थे, आई यूज टू विजिट मंडियाँ. ठीक है, उस टाइम तो मुझे पता भी नहीं था कि मंडियाँ एग्जिस्ट करती हैं, लेकिन मंडियाँ पूरा साल लगती हैं और डिफरेंट सिटीज़ में. आई यूज टू ट्रैवल 7-8 hours, रीच देयर बिफोर 5 AM 7 AM just to make sure that we get our hands on the best in the market. और वहाँ पे I started realize कि there are a lot of animals which are either retired, right, late in their ages, or they are emergency slaughtered, right? कोई बीमारी आ गई, उन्होंने कहा इससे पहले कि ये मर जाए, सो हम ज़िबा कर लेते हैं फ़ौरन से ताकि उसका मीट यूज़ हो सके. देयर आर लॉट ऑफ परसेंटेज ऑफ दोज एनिमल्स एंड दोज एनिमल्स वर वेरी क्विकली सेलिंग.
Right.
मतलब वी यूज टू विजिट और हमने देखा यार अच्छा इसकी टांग टूटी हुई है, हमने देखा ही नहीं उसकी तरफ, मुड़ के देखा एंड इट्स गॉन. आई स्टार्टेड टू रियलाइज दैट कसाई वो सारे जानवर खरीद लेते हैं एंड वेरी क्विकली.
Right.
तो आप 7 बजे गए ना, 8 बजे तक दे विल हैव
Cleaned up the entire market of the
everything.
sort
वो
of
गाड़ियाँ भरी हुई हैं एंड दे आर लिविंग.
cripples and the
सो मेरे लिए वो बहुत एक स्ट्रॉन्ग रियलाइजेशन थी कि वट काइंड ऑफ मीट आर वी ईटिंग, राइट. एंड देन स्टार्टेड डिगिंग इनटू वट काइंड ऑफ फूड वी आर गिविंग आवर एनिमल्स एंड ऑल दैट काइंड ऑफ स्टफ. एंड आई फिगर्ड आउट कि जिस तरह के जानवर हमारे टेबल्स पे पहुंच रहे हैं, आइदर दे आर रिटायर्ड, राइट, एंड ऑफ देयर कैरियर, और they are with some disease or something. So that's one category of animals. The second category is the animals which are very good looking and very healthy and everything, but they are raised on steroids.
Right.
For example, कुर्बानी कैटेगरी के अंदर जब मैं गया और इस्लामाबाद मंडी और सारी मंडियों में मैंने विजिट करना शुरू किया, लोगों से बात करना शुरू की who would raise good animals, right, 80 kg 90 kg का बकरा, look very fascinating. What's happening is that when you put on the numbers, the maths doesn't add up. अगर आप एक अच्छी खुराक के ऊपर एक जानवर को पाल रहे हैं, द मैथ डजंट हैव. ठीक है, आई कम टू दैट कि हाउ टू सॉल्व दैट एंड व्हाट्स दैट. व्हाट दे डू इज़ दैट टेक्सा, पीपारा, इस तरह के कुछ हार्मोन्स बहुत इजीली अवेलेबल हैं, स्टेरॉइड्स अवेलेबल हैं. दे वुड गिव द एनिमल स्टेरॉइड्स. एनिमल वुड ईट अ लॉट बिकॉज दीज स्टेरॉइड्स आर इनिशियली मेंट फॉर सपोर्टिंग द लिवर. अगर लिवर इफेक्ट हो जाए तो आप एक स्टेरॉइड देते हैं ताकि फॉर नाउ द एनिमल कैन ईट. बट दे आर यूजिंग वीकली बेसिस, दे यूजिंग दैम ऑन वीकली बेसिस. तो होता क्या है कि वो लिवर फंक्शन करना ख़त्म कर देता है. वो स्टेरॉइड्स उससे हेल्प करते हैं डाइजेशन में. यू प्रोवाइड लिवर टॉनिक एंड एवरीथिंग, जिसकी वजह से वो डाइजेस्ट करता है, उसे बहुत ज़्यादा भूख लगती है, वो बहुत ज़्यादा खाता है. एंड इवेंचुअली एनिमल दिखने में बहुत ज़्यादा हेल्दी है,
अंदर से खोखला है,
अंदर से उसके अंदर ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ स्टेरॉइड्स एंड एंटीबायोटिक्स एंड एवरीथिंग. सो दैट इज़ व्हाट्स हैपनिंग एंड इट्स हैपनिंग बाय द वे इन ऑल इंडस्ट्रीज. फॉर एग्जाम्पल इफ़ यू टेक ऑन पोल्ट्री एंड मिल्क, फॉर एग्जाम्पल पोल्ट्री इज़ वेरी ओपन एंड कॉमन, राइट. सबको पता है कि अगर 21 दिन का चूज़ा 1.5 किलो के ऊपर पहुंच रहे, देयर इज समथिंग रॉन्ग, राइट. हमने ऐसी पोल्ट्री की ब्रीड्स बना दी हैं जिनके अंदर द एनिमल हैज़ द कैपेसिटी टू गेन अ लॉट ऑफ वेट बट एट द कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ ऑफ अ लॉट ऑफ अदर थिंग्स. फॉर एग्जाम्पल उनकी इम्यूनिटी बहुत कम है एंड जिस तरह के इन्वायरमेंट में हम उन्हें रख रहे हैं वो भी बहुत बुरा है. तो उसका हल किस तरीके से निकालते हैं? यू गेट अ लॉट ऑफ एंटीबायोटिक्स, lot of antibiotics. और उसका नुकसान क्या हो रहा है? एट वन वे देर इज़ नो चेक एंड बैलेंस बिकॉज हर एंटीबायोटिक्स का एक एक्सक्रीशन टाइम होता है 7 days to 8 days, जिसके अंदर आप उसको ना मीट यूज़ कर सकते हैं ना एग यूज़ कर सकते हैं. देर इज़ नो चेक एंड बैलेंस ऑन दैट. सो एट वन वे इट्स गेटिंग इन टू आवर बॉडीज़, ऑन द अदर वे इट्स क्रिएटिंग एंटीबायोटिक रेजिस्टेंट बैक्टीरियाज, right. So it's creating
a
whole
COVID
generation
of the future.
COVID of the future, lumpy skin of the future, right. So lumpy skin आया, हमें पता ही नहीं था कि क्या करना है, किस तरीके से करना है and all that. By the way, lumpy was a fatal disease and a lot of animals were sold who were diagnosed early in lumpy disease and people would figure out okay बुखार हो गया है, दाने नज़र आने लग गए हैं, इसका मतलब there is something wrong, ज़िबा करो कसाई को दे दो, and people have had them on their tables. So this was happening, this is the reality and it was a reality check for me also कि क्या हो रहा है. And that is happening on the milk industry also. There is very common hormone called RBST which is used to just increase the milk. It is an artificial hormone, right? And normal lactating period of a cow might be 8 to 9 months, but using that you can keep taking the milk for a couple of years, and that is completely unnatural and that is commonly used.
And so once you see it, वाली बात है कि now you're just
once you see
unable
it,
to
I mean, I initially
enjoy
decided
that.
to move towards a farm. मैंने कहा मैं यहीं पे घर बना लेता हूँ, हम सब कुछ खुद लगाते हैं and live here, otherwise there is no possibility.
Yeah.
I can keep talking about this. जो अंडे ख़राब हो जाते हैं, जो अंडे टूट जाते हैं, जो कंज्यूमर नहीं लेता, they go to bakery. Big names. ठीक है, friend of mine has this supply chain for eggs, big names. They go to the bakery and you're eating that. So that's what happening. That's what is happening. So
Right.
organic farming, natural farming, that is the top tier, right? We are at the lowest bottom in which we are not doing even healthy farming. To solve that, I decided to grow everything myself, at least for my animals. So I took some land and I'm growing अपनी गंदम, अपना चारा, अपनी मकई, मटर, all these kinds of crops. और हमारे सारे animals जो हैं वो हमारी अपनी
So your crop is this so your makai and gandum and whatnot, is this for feed of the animals?
Feed of the animals and for myself also.
अच्छा, so you take some vegetable also.
I take गंदम from there. तो मैंने वो बाज़ार से आटा लेना ख़त्म कर दिया. I grow my own. मकई हम वहाँ से यूज़ करते हैं, छलियाँ वहाँ से आती हैं, मटर वहाँ से आते हैं. I try to reduce as much as possible. और जब हमारी अपनी crops हैं तो we can reduce the use of fertilizers. For example, we can reduce the use of pesticides. Just as an example, the amount of pesticide we use, pesticides or herbicides, that a friend of mine has his herd जो कि चराई सिस्टम के ऊपर है, तो the goats would go out and they would eat in the fields and then come back. तो एक दफ़ा हुआ ये कि they were eating in the field and parallel में किसी के मकई का फार्म था, तो goats accidentally went there. 5-1 मिनट उन्होंने कुछ खाया, उसने हटा लिया. All of them died. 20s of them. It was so heavy use of pesticide कि वो 5 मिनट के अंदर
बड़ी जानदार चीज़ भी मर गई.
राइट. एंड वही छलियाँ लग रही हैं, वो छलियाँ के अंदर जा रही है और वो छलियाँ हम कंज्यूम कर रहे हैं. देयर इज़ नो चेक एंड बैलेंस. ठीक है. यूएस में देयर इज़ अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग रेगुलेशंस बाय यूएसडीए एंड देयर एफडीए कि अगर आपका कंटेनर ऑफ मिल्क है, दे टेस्ट इट फॉर एंटीबायोटिक्स. इफ़ देयर आर एंटीबायोटिक्स स्टिल प्रेजेंट इन द मिल्क, दे डिस्ट्रॉय द होल कंटेनर. तो वो सारा हमारे यहाँ अ ह्यूज पोर्शन ऑफ मिल्क इज़ कमिंग फ्रॉम रॉ नेचुरल मिल्क कमिंग फ्रॉम आपका दूध वाला, एंड देयर इज़ नो चेक एंड बैलेंस. तो मैं तो अक्सर अपने दोस्तों को कहता हूँ कि आप अपने दूध वाले से पूछें, अगर वो कहता है कि मैं दूध में पानी मिला रहा हूँ तो आपके साथ बहुत अच्छा कर रहा है, क्योंकि वो कोई हार्म नहीं कर रहा. आप उस पानी को उबाल के रिजॉल्व कर सकते हैं. देयर ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ थिंग्स हैपनिंग एंड इट्स वेरी वेरी आई ओपनर. सो आई वांट this to go out and people to realize that at least look for what you're eating. Right? It's creating all kinds of problems, right? The problems which we see now and the problems which might see after some time.
I mean, yesterday I was looking at a stat. Do you know Pakistan, in terms of the percentage population that has diabetes, Pakistan is number 1 in the world now. 31% of the entire population is on some stage of diabetes now.
Yeah.
एंड द टॉप 10 कंट्रीज़ जो बाकी थी वो छोटी छोटी स्टेट्स थी. तो जो हमारी तो 222 करोड़ वक्मी के अंदर एक साइजेबल पॉपुलेशन जो है, और वो ये नहीं वजह से हो रही है ना.
एग्जैक्टली.
मैं वो ये सोच रहा था, लाइक आपको जो हुआ था विद द क्या fibromatosis and I got the AV malformation, and why are young people getting all these messed up weird shit?
and the doctors don't know. I asked them किस वजह से हुआ है, we don't know. So there might be something going wrong. मतलब आप अगर कुछ चीज़ें हम बहुत फॉर ग्रांटेड लेते हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल आवर एल्डर्स, ठीक है, हम सुनते हैं कि यार हमने देसी चिकन खाया है, हमने देसी दूध पिया है और हमने ये खुराकें खाई हैं, एंड आप देखते हैं कि वो 80-90s के अंदर भी देर सो एक्टिव एंड उन्हें किसी किस्म का कोई इशू नहीं है. वट वॉज हैपनिंग एट दैट टाइम इज़ दैट पीपल यूज टू ग्रो स्टफ देमसेल्व्स. ठीक है. ब्रॉयलर चिकन है, 21 दिन के अंदर तैयार हो गया, क्या खाया किसी को नहीं पता. हमारे गाँव में क्या होता था कि जी 4-5 मुर्गियाँ वो नेचुरली बस घूम रही हैं और वो वहीं खेतों से अपनी न्यूट्रिशन ले रही हैं एंड एवरीथिंग. कोई एंटीबायोटिक, कोई किसी किस्म का कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं है. एंड यू यूज टू ईट देम. कोई मेहमान आया तो मुर्गी ज़रूरत, आपने एक गाय एक बकरी घर में रखी हुई है और एक वो उसी से दूध आ रहा है. यू नो वट दे आर फीडिंग ऑन, एंड इसकी वजह से वो नेचुरल है. तो हमारे केस में वी स्टार्टेड टू सॉल्व द प्रॉब्लम्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन. लाइक यू कैन नॉट फीड by growing food at that space, right? तो आपकी population बहुत तेज़ी से increase हो रही है. We started to try that problem and then we created 10 more.
Yeah.
And those problems are more dangerous than the original one.
Yeah.
अगर आप 3 दफ़ा मुर्गी खा रहे हैं और वो आपको इतना harm दे रही है, उसकी बजाय अगर 1 दफ़ा खा लें and it's actually healthy, that's beneficial.
Yeah.
So that's what's missing. So what I did is that, of course, you cannot solve everything at once. So I started with goats. We're breeding them. And then we are providing all the food ourselves. So they are almost organic. 100% organic के लिए there is a definition that there shouldn't be any antibiotics, there shouldn't be any hormones and pesticides and herbicides used in the food. So we cannot do that all at once. So we are slowly moving towards natural fertilizers.
Right.
जितना भी हमारा वेस्ट आता है फार्म से, we try to store that and use that as fertilizer, and slowly there is a portion of our crop coming from that thing, and we are reducing the use of fertilizers. We are talking with the agriculture department here and institutes here in Islamabad. They are taking samples from us and teaching us how to do that. So on one side we are doing that, and we are preparing animals specifically for Qurbani purposes, right? And then we sold them on farm, and also with the first phase solution that we are also providing that solution. And that takes me to the final stage of the farm and the third phase. A natural question would come up कि आप कुर्बानी के लिए तो जानवर प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं, why not natural regular meat daily purposes? The problem is that math doesn't add up. जब आप उसे नेचुरल फूड, नेचुरल ग्रेन्स के ऊपर पाल रहे होते हैं, तो जो उसका ग्रोथ रेट आ रहा है पर डे और जो आप उस पर खर्चा कर रहे हैं पर डे, दैट डजंट ऐड अप.
राइट.
कुर्बानी के केस में यू गेट अ स्पेशल बेनिफिट क्योंकि
प्रीमियम ऑलरेडी मार्केट डिमांड सप्लाई
डबल प्राइस होती है. ठीक है, तो अगर आप 1700-1800 मटन आपको मिल रहा है एंड इट्स हाफ द लाइव वेट, तो हर लाइव वेट अगर 1000 पर केजी मिल रहा है तो कुर्बानी भी आपको 1500-1800 पर केजी लाइव वेट मिल जाता है. राइट. सो दैट इज ऑटोमेटिकली हाइक इन प्राइस, जिसकी वजह से दैट गेट्स जस्टिफाइड. जब आप नॉर्मली करना चाहें तो दैट डजंट ऐड अप. एंड उसके साथ भी दूसरा क्वेश्चन ये आता है कि व्हाट इज़ द वर्ल्ड डूइंग इन इट. दुनिया में ये प्रॉब्लम कैसे सॉल्व हुई? So what they did is that they developed their breed to perform uniformly. अभी क्या होता है कि अगर फॉर एग्जांपल मैं 100 एनिमल्स परचेज़ करता हूँ कुर्बानी के लिए, या मेरे पास अपने 100 किड्स आते हैं कुर्बानी के लिए और मैं उन्हें प्रिपेयर कर रहा हूँ, सम ऑफ देम वुड आउट परफॉर्म एंड मोस्ट ऑफ देम वुड अंडर परफॉर्म. ठीक है. लेकिन आप जब इंटरनेशनल स्टैंडर्ड्स देखते हैं तो देयर इज़ अ ब्रीड ऑफ गोट कॉल्ड बोर गोट. वो अफ्रीका से स्टार्ट हुई और बहुत सारी कंट्रीज ने अब अडेप्ट किया है. यू गेट अ होल बुकलेट ऑफ लिटरेचर that would prove that your animal would gain 200 per kg with this provide feed. So they have developed their breed slowly in a way to function uniformly. Similarly, San goat is for milk. अगर आप ऑस्ट्रेलियन और holistic Friesian गाय देखें तो people also import those here in Pakistan with a booklet that would say that this animal would produce this much milk a day provided this nutrition.
And are these breedable?
These are breedable, but the problem is that they are not adapted to our environment.
Okay.
Is
it too hot? Is it too cold?
Both. ठीक है. They are for moderate, so you have to design special farms. Moderated temperature.
Then again, cost increase वहाँ पर भी आ गया.
Cost increase. So what we are doing is that we have picked up one breed of goat that is a strain of Beetle called Makijina. And we are breeding them to involve this uniformity in them. And to do that, of course, you cannot get a lot of support from the government. People have tried. I mean, my predecessors have tried. And the problem there happens is that a government aati hai, you get some support, they'll create breeding centers and provide initiatives, and then
it's not a long-term play. Yeah, absolutely.
So what we're doing on ourselves is that we need to do this on scale. आप 5, 10, 15 जानवरों के साथ ही नहीं कर सकते. So what we are doing is that we have created synergy between different farms with the like-minded people who have the same goals, and we have a collective number, I think 250 to 300 goats on which we are following these practices. We are first of all creating a pool of sires which have certain properties that we want in the children.
Sires क्या होता है?
The buck, the male buck.
Okay.
And that's very hard to find. The reason is कि हमारे यहाँ मंडी सिस्टम है, and when you get to the mandi there is no record available. जानवर आपको देखने में बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है, but you're not sure that how many characteristics the animal can transfer to the kids.
So कोई certification नहीं है, कोई pedigree नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है.
Generally जो rule follow होता है वो होता है 4 corner chart. You need to know the grandparents, दादा दादी, नाना नानी, उनकी properties. If the male is depicting their properties, it will transfer them to the next generation. That you cannot find from a mandi. So what we did is that we again went hands-on. We tried to find good male bucks, and then we did our research. उसके लिए हमें भावल नगर जाना पड़े, घरों में जाना पड़े कि ये कहाँ से आया था, उसका फादर कहाँ से आया था, उसका फादर कहाँ से आया था. We tried to gather the data and we started acquiring those bucks, and that comes with a huge cost.
Right. Because a lot of those people are probably not interested in selling. वो आप demand
exactly you're asking them to give an animal that is already very low in number.
Yeah, right? It's so buying the golden duck essentially.
Imagine a male bakra having a price of 10 to 15 lakhs. That has happened. We have those males, but we are buying them for their properties, and this synergy we are trying to create a collective pool of bucks which we can exchange
Right.
And then we have a collected pool of females. So what we do is that we pair the female with the right buck, and then we, among the children's, we choose which one to breed. The ones who have very less problem of immunity, who are very stronger in their early ages, who show very good growth signs.
So selective breeding in the most
scientific selective breeding.
ठीक है.
And what we're trying to do is that we're trying to create a uniform breed with which we can create a model form in which a person can come in, take a herd from us, build our practices, and then they would perform like they're performing with us. With that, I think we can solve this problem of providing meat for the regular market also.
So you're not necessarily saying, yeah, listen, I want to control the entire market. You're really going to the grassroots and saying, yeah, जो आज से 20 साल बाद की market है, उसका phase 1 में, यानी कि phase 3 है आपका, लेकिन वो actually phase 1 है उसका, जिसमें आप कहोगे कि यार I'm gonna start building the first node, and eventually people are gonna buy the bucks from me.
Yes.
And build their own farms around it. Exactly. And follow the SOP guidelines from us. The booklet is coming from you.
Replicatable model होगा. Right now, it's not like that. आप अगर कोई जानवर लेते हैं तो आपको नहीं पता होता कि वो कैसे perform करेंगे. There is no history associated. और उससे होता क्या है कि a person would come in with a lot of investment. Goat farming is बहुत profitable है, बहुत पैसा है, मैं start कर दूंगा, जाएगा वो 30-40 animals खरीदेगा और 6 महीने बाद hands up. Because they're not performing, practice established nahi hai. For example, I have my farm, I have my Insta and Facebook page, so people contact. Hundreds of messages are just like, kya khilaएं? No documentation, कुछ नहीं, किसी को नहीं पता कि क्या खिलाना है. There are some feeds and one day out there जो आप पिक कर सकते हैं, लेकिन again वो मंजन बेचने वाला हिसाब है कि you don't know what's in that, right? और किसी को नहीं पता कि क्या करना है. So we're trying to solve that problem.
Right.
With providing animals for Kumani also. And the vision is that we can educate enough people that we can create a demand for this, first of all, because these things happen from demand. US may, when people realize that these things, these industry produced things have hazards, a demand for organic and natural and free range animals increased, which created then the production.
What about export though? I think there's an incredible demand globally now of organic, right? And so I think you can really jump the ship. अगर आपको local में तो नहीं मिल रहा, but dollar-based export markets
there are two problems to that.
Okay.
The first problem is that since we do not have any standards, it's okay for the Pakistani market, but they wouldn't let you export until you prove them that this is the diet the animal was on.
Yeah.
Right.
And how do you do that?
And how do you do that? You don't have any processes, no body to certify.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one problem. The second problem is that we still have a lot to solve here, right? We still have our own people to feed. And instead of getting double money from outside, what we're trying to do is to reduce the price so that our own people, there is a huge demand. Huge demand.
मतलब अगर आप वही वाली बात है, अगर आप यहाँ पे बेच लेंगे, बाहर तो आप बेच ही लेंगे. So
बाहर तो आप बेच लेंगे. For example, Pakistan is top 5 in producing milk.
Right.
But we might be the lowest in the productivity.
Yeah.
हमारी एक गाय 8 से 9 लीटर दूध देती है हार्डली, एंड ऑस्ट्रेलियन एंड फ्रीजियन गाय आपको 30 to 40 kg लीटर देती है. ठीक है, तो हमारी 4 गायें उस एक का कम्पीट करें एंड स्टिल वी आर एबल टू प्रोड्यूस दैट मच मिल्क. दैट मीन्स कि अगर हम अपने प्रोसेसेस ऑप्टिमाइज कर दें, आइदर वी कैन प्रोड्यूस 3 times which is more than enough, or we can reduce the price 3 times क्योंकि animal is eating the same.
Right.
So this is the goal. The vision is that the name Maveshi farm, not specific to goat, not specific to animal, is with the vision that we'll start from one industry. We'll try to realize people that this is important. We'll create a demand, and then we can slowly also implement similar models in other industries.
Have you had the opportunity to work with, let's say Angro Foods or, with their dairy, folks, or Nestle or some of these bigger corporates? With huge supply chains, and obviously they must have their own research centers as well.
Yeah, not yet, and the reason is that I specifically picked goats first and then the dairy, and the reason for that is the life cycle here is faster, shorter. The lactation period, the breeding period is 5 months. There it has 9 months. The age bull would take to mature is 2 years.
Right.
Here it is 12 months. So it's sort of faster, you can experiment faster, and there are no big organizations working in the meat industry. There are some associations in different regions of Pakistan, in Rahim Yar Khan, in Bahawalnagar, International Goat and Bull Association and things like that. So we are talking to them, and then we are working towards creating our own organic feed.
Right.
And so by the way, I have my mentor in US, He has a business established there, so he's talking to Penn State University, Pennsylvania University, talking to the nutritionists there, providing samples of our own domestically grown stuff, which is very cheaper here, and then providing them that this is the nutrition table, create a feed with them.
Right.
So वो आपको कहते हैं कि आप सोयाबीन मील ले लें और आप ये ले लें, इंटरनेशनली ये यूज़ होता है. वी आर ट्राइंग कि हम जो चीज़ क्रिएट करें वो सबसे पहले हमारी डिपेंडेंस ना हो, तो आप एक प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करने के लिए आप दोबारा से इंपोर्ट की तरफ ना जाना पड़े, एंड देन दैट इज़ ऑल्सो चीपर.
Right, so sustainable farming, essentially. Yeah,
and eventually we're trying to create a model that can replicate.
Right. We're at the 1 hour 50-minute mark. Sorry guys, आजकल तमाम जो हैं वो इतनी जा रही हैं, but conversations मज़े की होती हैं, तो I thought, especially इसके अंदर तो मुझे लगता है कि I mean the entire organic farming thing is an entire bala on its own. But I'm gonna sort of begin to wrap this up. There are a few other things that I wanted to have a conversation on, but maybe we can have that another time. Atique, I'm gonna ask you a question. Generally, I ask all of my all the folks who come in. Tell me a little bit about how you see Pakistan, because you chose Pakistan. You know there's a patriotism there, there's a cultural connectivity there. बड़ी वो है, हमारा एक तीसरे म्यूचुअल फ्रेंड है, उनसे मेरी परसों तरसों ही बात हो रही थी व्हाट्सएप के ऊपर. ही वाज लाइक यार बहुत मुश्किल हो रहा है, बहुत लोग कह रहे हैं क्या करूँ. और मैंने उनको ही बोला, मैंने कहा यार देखें सच्ची बात है, आई एम नॉट वांट टू से कि यू डोंट गो और यू डोंट गो, बट मुझे लगता है अपॉर्चुनिटी सारी देखनी चाहिए. फॉर मी पर्सनली ऑब्वियसली आई एम चूजिंग टू और होपिंग टू स्टे इन पाकिस्तान. तो जाहिर है कि जब बंदा वो देख रहा होता है तो कुछ ना कुछ प्रोजेक्ट कर रहा होता है. आप मैथ में अच्छे हैं, आप प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग में अच्छे हैं, आई एम श्योर आप डेटा में भी अच्छे होंगे, तो वो बंदा कहीं ना एक सबकॉन्शियस लेवल के ऊपर एक एल्गोरिथम रन कर रहा होता है कि यार ये होगा तो फिर ये होगा तो फिर ये होगा, तो इवेंचुअली दुनिया ऐसी नज़र आ रही है. आपको क्या लगता है 28 साल के बाद का पाकिस्तान, यू नो नोइंग व्हाट यू नो नाउ, सीइंग व्हाट यू सीन, हाउ डू यू सी पाकिस्तान ऑफ 2050?
Right, so from the technical side, I think I would skip because you would have so many answers from the technical people. So let's focus on the non-tech and farming and that side. So I think farming is a forte, right? So a lot of GDP is coming from farming and everything, but productivity is very low. And I now see people from tech side coming into farming and combining them both and producing awesome results. You had CEO of Farmdar here, and he was talking about some cool stuff, right? Focusing on the agri part of it. I want to focus on the livestock part of it. So moving from 20-30 years from now, I think we would have been able to realize and create this notion in people that we should be aware of what we're eating, right? So we would be more conscious about what's happening and what's coming on our table. And then after that, we would have created so much space for improvement in this, to improve the productivity, to move better food. And I personally see myself here 30, 40 years after thinking that I was part of this revolution. So a lot of things would come, right? We need some external factors to contribute in that. For example, private partnerships can do only so much, specifically in this area. So you need your government to start focusing its effort in biosecurity, in trying to improve our breeds. For example, there are so many scenarios in which our breeds were taken from international markets. For example, by the way, Chinese are importing our beetle goats. So that's an alarming thing for us, that 5 years, 10 years down the road, they'll introduce a breed which would be a mutation of our own breed, and we'll be importing that from them, right? So I don't want to see that happening. For that, I think we would need some influence from the government or these big tech or big agri giants, right? So that they can realize that this is important for us, for productivity, for GDP, for improving the baseline. एक मुहावरा है जिसमें हम पॉवर्टी की बहुत ज़्यादा बात करते हैं ना, तो बकरी को गरीब की गाय कहा जाता है, क्योंकि it's very cheap and it can provide for your family even, right? So we want to make that happen in true sense, ताकि आप बहुत सारे लोगों को उस बिल्कुल पॉवर्टी लाइन से ऊपर उठा के ला सकें, which are real struggling with food and everything, using this one sector. So I see that happening, but a lot of factors can accelerate that.
100%. I think यहाँ पर जो है वो एक element of food security is very, very important, which is going to hit this region over the next decade or so. You know, they have all the data and all the research is pointing towards that as well. So I think agri is not just a nice to have, really think about it. It's something जिसमें हमारा future dependent है.
Yeah.
हमारा survival dependent है, and we need to now begin to have more smarter people, begin to get interested in the sector जो कि generally हमेशा ignore होता है कि बट ठीक है यार, ये तो गांव के लोगों का काम है, फार्मर्स का काम है, पढ़ा लिखा आदमी तो टेक का काम करता है, टेक का काम करें, इट्स नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम. बट अगर आपके अंदर वो सॉर्ट ऑफ इंटेलेक्ट आ गया, वो आपको एजुकेशन मिल गई, वो सारा कुछ हो गया, तो सॉर्ट ऑफ गिव बैक टूवर्ड्स समथिंग जो कि हम सबको इम्पैक्ट करता है. वी ऑल ईट द फूड दैट्स कमिंग टू आवर टेबल, एंड दैट्स डेफिनेटली देयर. आई थैंक यू सो मच फॉर कमिंग इन. दिस वाज इनक्रेडिबली इंसाइटफुल. बाकी सबका तो चलो आई विश यू बेस्ट ऑफ लक, बट आई थिंक दिस पर्टिकुलर लास्ट पार्ट जो कि मुझे लगता है कि आपका वो जो है ना अंदर का जो पैशन है वो है इसी के अंदर ही. So I wish you all the best. I see an incredible future there. So I hope that's your $1 billion unicorn. It'd be fascinating to see the guy from university जो AI कर रहा था वो the unicorn that he ends up building is around that, but I think it's very much required, and I hope you're able to solve some of the problems that you've mentioned. Solutions use करते हैं, वही वाली बात है, grit. I hope you can sustain having that grit. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
And for all of you guys, thank you so much for watching. अगर आपको ये एपिसोड पसंद आई हो, अपने दोस्तों यार के साथ ज़रूर शेयर करिएगा. आपको क्या लगता है, हमने मुख्तलिफ चीज़ों के बारे में बात की, when it comes to skills, AI, work ethic, all of those things. What are your comments on that? फिर इसी के साथ खाने के बारे में, ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग के बारे में, what are your comments on that? आप किसी चीज़ से एग्री या डिसएग्री करते हैं, हमें कमेंट सेक्शन में आके ज़रूर बताएं. इसी के साथ साथ यूट्यूब वाले लाइक का बटन दबाएंगे, एंगेजमेंट की ज़्यादा लोगों तक हमारी कॉन्वर्सेशन पहुंचेगी. ऑडियो प्लेटफॉर्म वाले सब्सक्राइब का बटन दबाएंगे, आने वाले एपिसोड्स की आपको नोटिफिकेशन मिलेगी. फेसबुक वाले नीचे दी गई हुई लिंक पर क्लिक करके TBT कम्युनिटी ज्वाइन कर सकते हैं, जहाँ पर हम डिफरेंट फीडबैक भी लेते हैं, गेस्ट रिकमेंडेशन भी लेते हैं, आर्टिकल्स भी शेयर करते हैं. सो यू कैन जॉइन दैट एज वेल. यहाँ पर कहीं पर इजी पैसा जैज़ का इशारा होगा. इफ यू लाइक सपोर्ट द चैनल, वी एक्सेप्ट एनीथिंग फ्रॉम ₹1 to as much as you'd like. It's a thought that counts. इसी के साथ साथ we are planning on something very exciting in the coming months, and so we are beginning to open up ourselves for partnered podcasts as well as branded segments. So if you are from an agency or a brand, and you'd like to potentially partner up with us, you can contact us. The email is somewhere on the channel, so you can look for that. But anyways, this was Muzamil. You were watching Thought Behind Things. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.